Good morning. If you could please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, to the republic which stands, nation under God. Justice. Thank you. Please be seated. Good morning, everyone. I want to welcome you to the July 26, 2021 Land Use Hearing Officer hearing. My name is Susan Finch, and I'll be presiding over today's cases as the hearing officer. Let me start by introducing Mr. Tom Hisney to my left, who will go over any changes we have in today's agenda. Mr. Hisney.
Good morning, Madam Hearing Master. My name is Tom Hisney. I'm with the Hillsborough County Development Services Department. On my left, I have Carmen Mason. She is also with Development Services. During the course of the meeting today, we'll be joined virtually by various planners from Development Services, and we are also being joined virtually by Mary Dorman and Cameron Clark of the County Attorney's Office. I have one change to the agenda, unpublished change to the agenda. And this is item H3, variance application 21-0607. The applicant is Envirotech Pest Control Services Incorporated. They've asked to move this case to the very end of today's agenda.
Okay.
And then that takes us then to the published withdrawals and continuances. Item A1, special use 21-0375, applicant Trademark Metals Recycling. This application is being continued by staff to the August 23rd, 2021 Land Use Hearing Officer meeting. Item A2, variance application 21-0532. The applicant is Nick Bracken. This application is out of order to be heard and is being continued to the August 23rd, 2021 Land Use Hearing Officer meeting. Item A3, special use application 21-0606. The applicant is Dune, Florida Land One Sub LLC and South Shore Bay Club LLC. This application is being continued by the applicant to the August 23rd, 2021 Land Use Hearing Officer meeting. Item A4, special use 21-0743, the Padilla School of Tampa Bay Incorporated. That's the applicant. This application is being continued by staff to the August 23rd, 2021 Land Use Hearing Officer meeting. Item A5, variance application 21-0803. The applicant is Douglas H. Negron. This application is out of order to be heard and is being continued to the August 23rd, 2021 Land Use Hearing Officer meeting. A6, variance application 21-0838. The applicant is Science Systems and Graphic Designs Incorporated. This application is out of order to be heard and is being continued to the August 23rd, 2021 Land Use Hearing Officer meeting. Item A7, variance application 21-0853. The applicant is Wesley Harrell. This application is out of order to be heard and is being continued to the August 23rd, 2021 Land Use Hearing Officer meeting. Application A8, variance application 21-0893. The applicant is Gustavo Alcala. This application is out of order to be heard and is being continued to the August 23rd, 2021 Land Use Hearing Officer meeting. Item A9, variance application 21-0902. The applicant is David Wright. This application is being continued by staff to the August 23rd, 2021 Land Use Hearing Officer meeting. And finally, item A10, variance application 21-0928. The applicant is Ann Hurley. This application is out of order to be heard and is being continued to the August 23rd, 2021 Land Use Hearing Officer meeting.
All right. Thank you so much, Mr. Hisney. I appreciate it. Let me start by going over our procedures today. I'll conduct the variance and the special use hearings and render a decision on each case 15 business days following today's hearing. Our hearing today is informal. I'll ask questions related to the direct testimony presented today. I'll call and question witnesses as I deem appropriate, and will decide all questions of procedure. Irrelevant, immaterial, or unduly repetitious evidence will be excluded. Any part of the evidence may be received in written form, and all testimony must be under oath. Hearsay evidence may be used for the purpose of supplementing or explaining other evidence, but shall not be sufficient in and of itself to support a finding by me unless it would be admissible over objections in a civil action. Our order of presentation today is as follows. Essentially, it's the same for the variances and the special uses that are found at the end of the agenda, with one exception, and I'll get to that in just one second. The Development Services Center Department always begins with a brief introduction of the agenda item. For variances, the staff goes first. The staff planner assigned to the variance case will have 15 minutes to present the county's findings. In the case of special uses, the applicant goes first. The applicant will have 15 minutes to present their case, and then that's followed by staff. We start then with proponents. Proponents have 15 minutes to present any testimony in support of a case, and the same is true when we go to opponents. Anyone who would like to speak against an application, everyone in total has 15 minutes. We'll then go back to county staff. County staff will have 5 minutes to address any issues or information that was presented today. And then finally, we go back to the applicant. The applicant has 5 minutes for rebuttal at the end of the hearing. When you come up, if you are going to speak, if you are in the room or you're virtual, if you could please start by giving us your name and address for the record. We are recording this hearing and we want to make sure that we have who is speaking as to what application correct. And then if you are in the room, when you're done, if you could please see Trey, he's to my right, he's with the clerk's office. And if you could also sign in with your name, address, and the application number to which you spoke to. Let me now turn to the county attorney, who will explain the appeal rights to decisions that are made by a land use hearing officer.
Thank you. This is Mary Dorman from the county attorney's office. This land use hearing officer public hearing is for variance and special use requests. This is the time for interested parties to present evidence and testimony. Once the hearing officer has closed the case, the record of that case is also closed, and no new evidence regarding that case may be submitted thereafter. Any decision by the hearing officer may be appealed to the Land Use Appeals Board. Should a decision of the hearing officer be appealed, the evidence and testimony presented at this public hearing shall be the only evidence that is subject to review by the Appeals Board. In reaching a final decision on petitions, the Appeals Board will only consider the decision of the hearing officer and record made at this public hearing. If an appeal is filed, the Appeals Board hearing shall consist of oral argument by the party appealing the decision, county staff, and any interveners, each of whom may be represented by legal counsel. The following shall have standing to appeal a decision of the hearing officer or to intervene in an appeal. 1, the applicant, or 2, anyone who appeared before the hearing officer, presented testimony or other evidence, and is adversely affected by the decision of the hearing officer. It is the role of the county attorney's office to ensure that no new evidence or testimony is allowed before the appeals board that was not presented to the hearing officer at today's hearing. The county attorney will recommend that the appeals board disregard evidence or testimony that's outside the record made at today's public hearing. Any evidence presented to the appeals board that is outside the record created at today's hearing could jeopardize the legality of the appeals board decision, and the presenter of that evidence could hurt their own cause. The safest course of action, then, is for you to write down any comments you make today and repeat them to the appeals board.
All right. Thank you, Ms. Dorman. I appreciate it. As I mentioned, all testimony must be under oath. So if you plan to speak today, either in the room or virtually, if you could please stand and raise your right hand and I'll swear you in. Do you solemnly swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth? So help you God.
I do.
Thank you. Please be seated. All right, Mr. Hisney, we're ready for the first case.
So this morning, we have no vested rights cases, no fee waiver requests, no remands, no reconsideration requests, no site development variances, no sign variances, which then takes us to section H of our agenda, which are the general variances. First case is item H1, application 21-0338. The applicant is Keith Bolton. They're requesting a variance to lot size by utilities, lot development standards, and accessory structure requirements. Staff findings will be presented by Laura Marley.
All right. I understand the applicant is virtual. Is the applicant here? Oh, I'm sorry. The staff goes first. I violated my own talk. Ms. Marley, I apologize. Go ahead.
Good morning, Laura Marley, Development Services. The applicant requests a lot size variance to accommodate a 2-lot subdivision of property zoned RSC 6 that was created by recorded deeds without county approval. A setback variance is requested for an existing barn on the proposed west lot. A minimum lot size of 1/2 acre of upland is required for the use of septic system. According to the applicant, both of the subject properties are served by existing septic tanks. The applicant is requesting a 0.11 acre reduction to the required lot size to allow a lot size of 0.39 acre of upland area for the east lot. The lot to the west meets the requirements. Subdivisions in the urban service area must connect to public wastewater service except for development applications submitted prior to January 1st, 2021. A parcel may be subdivided into 2 lots and be served by septic tanks, provided a connection to public water service is not feasible. The applicant submitted a certified parcel application to subdivide the property in May of 2020. And utility staff reports that the connection to public wastewater service is not cost feasible in the subject case. The west lot is a through lot with the required front yards on the north and south sides. The applicant requests a 6.8-foot reduction to the required 10-foot setback to allow a setback of 3.2 feet from the north property line. Thank you.
Thank you. I appreciate it. All right. It's time for the applicant. Good morning.
Good morning. My name is Amber Tu. My address is 2002 Holloway Road, Plant City, Florida, 33567. I am the representing agent for Mr. Bolton. We applied for a certified parcel review in May of 2020 to bring both lots to a conforming status. Zoning then requested a resubmittal due to the Land Development Code requiring a 1/2 acre of upland per parcel, and that a variance will be required for the current lot sizes. The deed for the east parcel at folio 063500-0001 shows that the parcel was its own parcel containing 0.39 acres in 1980. The deed for the west parcel shows that ownership was changed in 2012, but the original deed is not shown. As Ms. Marley stated, Mr. Bolton is requesting a lot size variance for a 2-lot subdivision and a setback variance for an existing barn on the west lot. Each lot currently does have its own septic, well, and a mobile home. The east lot has a mobile home on it, or has had it on there since 2010, and the west lot has had a manufactured home on it since 1979. Mr. Bolton is looking to replace the homes on each lot with a new one. He is not looking to create anything new. He would just like to upgrade the homes. And right now he's unable to do so due to the lots being considered non-conforming lots. And then we are requesting the variance of the 6.8 feet reduction for the existing barn on the west lot. And that's about it.
All right. I just had a quick question for the record. I think you've established this, but I just want to make sure it's clear. The lots were subdivided into 2 approximately what year?
I'm not sure. I looked at the deeds and couldn't find where it showed when it was separated.
I thought you just mentioned in your testimony, maybe I misunderstood, something in the 1980s was done.
So it showed that the east parcel was its own parcel in 1980. The 1980 deed shows that it was that lot by itself.
All right. And then your client bought the property in what year?
2017. Let me double check that. Yes, ma'am, 2017.
Okay, because I'm looking at a deed in my backup that says it's dated May 11th, 2020. And
I think that, oh, I'm sorry.
Go ahead.
He bought the east parcel, I'm sorry, the west parcel in 17, and then the east parcel in 2020.
I see. Okay, in 2020. All right, and so they were clearly 2 lots when your client purchased both lots.
Yes, ma'am.
All right, that was the end of my question. Thank you so much.
You're
All
welcome.
right, we'll call for anybody that would like to speak in support. Anyone in favor? Nobody in the room? No one online? Anyone in opposition to this request? Seeing no one, county staff, Ms. Marley, anything further?
Nothing further. Thank you.
All right, Ms. Tu, do you have anything before we close?
No, ma'am, that's it.
All right, then we'll close variance 21-0338 and go to the next case.
Our next case is item H2, application 21-0573. The applicant is Brandon R.E. Holdings LLC. They're requesting variance to buffer and screening requirements and to site development standards. Staff findings will be presented by Kevin DeFrank.
Good morning.
Good morning. Kevin DeFrank with Development Services. And for this case, the applicant is requesting setback and landscape buffering and screening variances for existing commercial structures on property zone CG. And per the Land Development Code, the minimum required side yard setback in the CG district is determined by section 6.01.03, 6.06.06, and 6.11.00 by use, with additional setback requirements for buildings that are more than 100 feet in length. And for this subject case, the side yard setback is determined by the buffering and screening requirements found in section 6.06.06. In addition, the north side of the subject parcel abuts property that is zoned RSC 6, which is developed with an existing single-family home, and therefore a 20-foot wide buffer area with a type B screening comprised of a 6-foot high fence, wall, or hedge, and a row of evergreen trees is required along the north property line. Specifically, the applicant requests that a 17.5-foot reduction to the required buffer width to allow a 2.5 wide buffer area along the north property line, a 100% reduction in screening requirements to require no screening within the buffer area, and a 17.5-foot reduction to the required side yard setback to allow a setback of 2.5 feet from the north property line. And staff findings include that the subject property was cited by code enforcement, which has been placed in the case record for the subject variance. In addition, the 15-foot wide platted alleyway abutting the north side of the property is not a street as defined by the Land Development Code, and therefore the north side of the subject property is not a required front yard, the side yard. And no variants have been requested by the applicant to other development requirements, including but not limited to maximum building coverage and maximum impervious area. And lastly, the applicant has proposed conditions of approval for the requested variance, and I believe Tom wanted to provide additional comments in regards to the proposed conditions.
Mr. DeFrank, before we leave you, I just had one question. That finding
Yes.
that says no variances have been applied for regarding, but not limited to, maximum building coverage and maximum impervious area. Does that presume then that that is an issue, that there are problems with those two requirements and perhaps others with this?
No,
application?
it just means that they didn't request this in the original submittal or throughout the whole review.
But
They
they're
did
not
request it.
violating those provisions as you understand it.
Correct.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Hisney, did you have anything you wanted to add?
Yes, as mentioned by Mr. DeFrank, the applicant has proposed a number of conditions. Upon review of these, I would have to state, I think that the wording of some of these conditions would potentially pose, if you were fine that you wanted to impose any conditions, that the wording of some of these, I think, would pose implementation and enforcement issues for the county, such as sound blankets being installed in various locations in the north as needed due to louder activity. What is a sound blanket? What is as needed due to louder activity? Also about RVs being parked on the northwest side of the property. There's no dimensional things, put there. So if you were inclined to recommend conditions of approval, I think they would, you would have to modify some of these conditions to make them enforceable by the county.
Understood. All right, thank you so much. Is the applicant here? Good morning.
Good morning, hearing officer. Thank you, Mr. DeFrank and Mr. Hisney. For the record, Todd Pressman at 200 2nd Avenue South, number 451 in St. Petersburg, Florida. I do have a PowerPoint for you if we can bring that up, please.
Mr. Pressman, on your PowerPoint, do you have that on a thumb drive that you can leave with the clerk?
Yes, I do.
Okay, thank you.
I'm also here with Mr. Jerry Farmer. Mr. Farmer is one of the co-owners of the property. This is VAR 21 dash, I'm sorry, Mr. Hisney, what I have is a hard copy. I typically hand in a hard copy of it. Okay. VAR 21-0573. Can you see that, hearing officer?
I can.
Okay. We'll go through these kind of quick here. Slide, yeah, thank you. We're in the Brandon area on State Route 60. Next slide, please. A little closer. We're just east of King. Hold on. Oh, thank you, sir. Next slide, please. Just a little bit east of Kingsway and Montclair. You can, or east of Montclair, you can see this is the site here. It's made up of a lot of small, very small parcels. Next slide, please. This is the front of the site as it borders State Route 60. Next slide, please. And this is the center and rear of the site. Next slide, please. So the issues are, I'm going to have to coordinate on my, because the pop-up there, just, I have it here. Bear with me 1 second, please. I think this gentleman's going to fix it. Thank God for these tech guys here every day. Thank goodness for them.
Yes.
Thank you very much, sir. So I won't repeat them word for word. I think you understand the issues are, this is a repeat from the staff report. It's a reduction of the required buffer, allow a 2.5-foot wide buffer, 100% reduction in screening, and basically the same for the side yard setback. Next slide, please.
Sorry to interrupt.
Yes.
Actually, Madam Hearing Master, on the staff report, item 3, it's the rear yard setback, not side yard. In your PowerPoint, you identify it's a reduction to the side yard setbacks. Actually, the rear yard has identified the staff report.
I appreciate
Tom,
that. I actually,
It's correction. It is the side yard setback because it's a corner lot.
Oh,
And the
Yep.
side.
oh, excuse me. Well then, okay.
well, don't feel bad. Mr. Frank corrected me twice on that as the issue is coming forward. So he's smarter than me, all the staff.
All right, so just before
Yes.
we go on, so what do we need to do with the staff report? Is it correct?
Yeah,
Yes.
this is from the staff report. That's a copy and paste from the staff report.
Well,
Yes.
Mr. Hisney's point is that in the staff report, item 3 calls it a rear yard and your presentation calls it a side yard.
Hold on for a second, please.
Oh, sure.
The staff report, I corrected the staff report. It says side yard instead of rear yard.
Ah, well, then I must not have the reside. So number 3 is a side yard, is what you're saying, Mr. DeFrank?
Yes.
Thank you. Good. All right.
So the dimensional requirement is the same, but yes, it is a side yard.
Thank you. Thank you for that clarification. Mr. Pressman?
Yes.
Everyone agrees it's a side yard.
Okay, great. Well, like I said, the staff, they're smarter than me. Next slide, please. The business is detailing and cleaning RVs on the site. Next slide, please. And next slide, please. So per the survey, as indicated, there's an unimproved alley to the rear, numerous buildings and structures as shown on State Route 60. Next slide, please. And what's proposed is a 17.5-foot side yard setback and buffer, no additional screening. Next slide, please. Oh, go back 1 slide, please. I have indicated through many materials that there is one small point that is closer than 2.5 feet. It's a little corner that sticks out. So that has been communicated throughout the issue. Next slide, please. So we're proposing 2.5 feet more or less on the side setback and at one point. Next slide, please. So proposed conditions, which Mr. Hisney referred to, is any building or structure will be closed on the rear of that structure on that north side of the property. So it's not open, it's closed. RVs will be parked on the northwest side of the property to provide additional buffer to the rear. RVs parked in that manner will not be worked on. And that was actually directed by the Code Enforcement Department. They felt that was the best place for it to go, and they thought that was an aid to the property. Is that correct, Mr. Farmer? That's correct. The installed halogen lighting along State Road 60 will be focused and directed downward so it doesn't illuminate to the rear. And sound blankets will be installed in various locations on the north as needed due to louder activity and or increased sound barrier buffer. I'll come back around to be a little bit more detailed on that, why they are located where they are. That was actually worked out between the applicant and code enforcement, where they're located now, and the result that was very positive, which I'll come back and indicate that to you or show that to you. Next slide, please. So looking at support for the variance, first of all, there is a 15-foot alley between the property on the rear, as you can see here. Now, hearing officer, see, as we're looking our perspective to the right, which is east, the alleyway does not continue to the next property. It stops. There is no alleyway continued, and it's a developed property. To the west, excuse me, what I just indicated was to the west. So to the west of the site, their alley does not continue, and it's developed and it's paved. To the east, the alley continues for one block only, and that does not continue. I can show you that in an aerial. So as I indicated, to the east, it's a dead-end alley. To the west, it continues for a block, and then the alley does not continue. Both blocks are unimproved. If we could go back to the PowerPoint, please. Thank you.
And just to interrupt you 1 second, Mr. Pressman, just for anybody watching, we typically do not allow anyone to show graphics off of a phone or a tablet because you cannot submit it into the record. But Mr. Pressman just showed an aerial that's available in the record already, so I'll allow it. But just so you know, for any future hearing coming up, we do not allow presentations from a tablet or a cell phone unless you've submitted a copy of it to the clerk. Go ahead, Mr. Pressman.
Thank you, hearing officer. And thank you, sir. We go to the next slide, please. So this is the 15-foot alleyway between the properties. A little closer, you can see that it's heavily landscaped, it's heavily buffered, as is the site as well, and the property to the rear. Next slide, please. And this is on the ground, so the site is to the right. The alleyway is in front of you. You can see that again, it's very, there's a lot of buffering and it is unimproved. Next slide, please. And this is another shot, and this is the opposite way. The alley's on the right, the subject site's on the left. You can see again the heavy buffering. Next slide, please. This are some of the sound blankets, and again, the location of those was determined between the applicant and code enforcement. These are specific sound blankets to help quiet the noise of any that there may be, and they're all installed. Next slide, please. Just another view of the sound blankets. Next slide, please. And again, more sound blankets. Next slide, please. Now, the site was, the property was cited for a sound complaint, which the county air and noise division did investigate under EPC. And we can tell you from Mr. Reggie Sanford, who's the assistant director of the air division, that they did research the site and they monitored the site and they took readings of the site. They found it was in compliance and they've closed that case. So he says, yes, we will be closing out the complaint. We conducted a noise compliance demonstration a few weeks ago and just yesterday received final confirmation there are no violations. So the steps that the applicant has taken have brought the site into compliance and under noise concerns or the noise level as Hillsborough County would direct or regulates. Next slide, please. Now, the next thing to look at is this is a very shallow site. And what happens when you look at the 30-foot front yard setback and the 20-foot rear side yard setback, that only leaves a small area for development. Next slide, please, which is about 58.7 feet buildable. So this particular shallow site is severely affected by both of those setbacks and causes a lot of restriction on this property that others do not. Next slide, please. This isn't unusually shallow and has a long history of this use and these structures. So if you look, hearing officer, you'll see as you look along State Route 60, and there's a few exceptions here and there, but primarily the great majority of properties are much wider and provide a lot that is much more buildable than these. And again, this has a long history. Next slide, please. This is the 85-86 zoning map. As you can see along that area, these are extremely shallow lots. And as I've shown you, the property is made up of many of these lots. Next slide, please. This is the 1973 zoning map. You can see it continued all the way back to 1973. You can see the CC to the left and the HC to the right, which is drastically different on how this lot can be developed. Next slide, please. This is another zoning map, but I was not able to determine the date. Next slide, please. So importantly, when you look at the zoning maps and you see all those lots, they're very small. And in that area that I showed you, there really are only 1, 2, 3, 4, maybe 5 that are the same shallow along that whole stretch of State Route 60. So these are lots all that are affected by that manner, which are just a few compared to the huge majority along State Route 60. You can just see across the street and you can see next door. Next slide, please. This is a 2002 area. You can see that it's covered up there to the right, but there are structures there as they exist today. Next slide, please. And in 1999, you can see that was existing as well. Next slide, please. And in 1995, you can see the structure there as well. Next slide, please. So in summary, the site is unusual. It is unique in regard to its configuration and its size, particularly its shallow nature, and that does create a hardship for use. Almost half of the property is excised due to setbacks. Other properties don't suffer that same concern. This is a long-term configuration and multi-decade situation. With the conditions that we proposed right on State Route 60, we do feel that the application is absolutely approvable and meets the criteria. It's not injurious or detrimental to any other properties in the immediate vicinity that we're aware of. And allowing the variance would allow the continuation of use that is similar to others and has been there for many, many decades. Mr. Farmer's here. We're happy to answer any questions. I think he has one quick comment for you, if we may.
All right. Before you move on, if I could just ask a couple of questions.
Sure.
One is, how long has this business been in operation? Yes.
Mr. Farmer will answer if you
Go
may.
ahead. If you can just give us your name and address.
Jerry Farmer, 520 East Brandon Boulevard. The business has been in business there for 14 years.
14 years. Okay. And I see through the application, there's some talk of that there's a site plan in for a new property that you plan to move this operation. Is that correct?
Yes, ma'am, we've outgrown it. Yes, ma'am.
All right. And
Fortunately.
when would that happen approximately?
Well, with COVID, we're supposed to be about a year, probably 6 months to a year. You know, they're already on the other site working on it.
I see. And so in 6 months to a year, you will move and this operation will no longer exist on this property.
Correct. It'll be sold to somebody else.
I
Correct.
see. Okay.
That's already in contract.
All right. And so frankly, that leads to the question of your motivation to correct these violations because you're leaving.
Well, if something happens and we decide to stay there, if something goes wrong with the other contract, we decide to stay there and continue on there. We may have two sites. We're not apt to leaving there and leaving that for retail. That's one of our suggestions we may want to do.
I see. Okay. And then finally, the noise mitigation that was done as a result of the noise violation, that particular violation, are those blankets in the rear of the buildings, or it looked like some of them were in the rear of the buildings and some of them were on a fence?
Well, they're on this. It's like building on the sides and building in the back. When the code enforcement came to do it the first time, they still couldn't find enough noise because we use pressure washers that come from Home Depot. So they're all EPA approved and all that. So there wasn't they couldn't pull up enough noise. We did this specifically just to try to be good neighbors. And we also agreed to tell the neighbor, hey, we'll put up a fence, and he didn't want to do that either. We've reached our hand out a bunch.
Blankets from the interior. and
Yes,
exterior.
you're right. Correct. Blankets are in the interior and exterior of the building,
I see.
on the backside side.
I see.
They just have a front entrance to pull in.
Were the placement of those blankets in response to the county's noise complaint that was filed?
That is correct. Yes, ma'am.
All right. And so the email or letter from the county closing out that noise complaint, does that specify the location of those blankets and measures that were taken
Yes,
to
ma'am.
eliminate the noise?
What? What?
Let's be sure on that. So,
Put your name on the record, Mr. President.
so Todd Pressman again. So the location of the sound blankets,
Correct.
is that part of the written approval, or is it specific written in the order where the sound blankets should go?
I don't know if they wrote it. They walked out and walked us by to show us what they wanted to have done.
What I'm going to is, are they a requirement to satisfy that noise complaint, therefore they need to remain? And so if it doesn't specify where they're located, then
They don't.
it's hard to enforce that.
I would answer to you that yes, the sound blankets are there to help alleviate that issue. And I would suggest off the top of my head that the existing location, the sound blankets should remain if you so seek to include that as a condition.
And can you show me on your plan or a graphic where they're located?
Sure. If we could pull up the PowerPoint again, can you point that out?
Yeah.
You're doing great, sir. We're gonna go to an aerial.
Okay.
No, yeah, if you keep moving, please. Backward. Is that going to be good for you to point it out? Jerry? How would you like, is there a microphone that he could take over there with you?
If you could just describe it from there, but you need to be on a
You need to be on the
microphone.
microphone.
Yeah. Give us your name again, just because.
Jerry Farmer
Thank
on the
you.
left-hand side, looking at my left towards the west side. That's all closed in. But on your left, right here. That's all closed in for any, so no sound can escape out of there. So all we have is we closed in the whole building except for the front entrances going towards Highway 60 so they can drive in and out. Everything else has been, we put styrofoam in there. We had people come in on the backside. We put sound blankets. We did everything we knew to do in there to do all that.
All right, just so I'm clear. So the interior of that building to the west, to the north, and to the east,
Mhm.
all has sound blankets on it.
Sound blankets or styrofoam that has been put in there to block sound
I
barriers.
see. Okay, that answers my question.
On
You've got to be on the microphone.
and where our office building is, right there, where it says the 5, right there, they have sound blankets there also. So it surrounds the whole, it encompasses the whole, any part is covered except for the front entrances where they had to pull in, where one way or the other it has a sound barrier.
All right.
Wherever there's an RV, it's covered,
Yes, correct,
interior and exterior.
correct, yes.
I think what might be an easy answer from what Mr. Farmer is indicating is the couple structures they pull an RV into, those structures have sound blankets on all sides, Mr. Farmer?
That's correct.
Okay, that might be much easier for you.
Right, and those are the structures where the maintenance of the RVs is conducted.
That's correct. Mr. Farmer's indicating correct.
And those RVs are not maintained outside. They're all done interior in the buildings?
Correct.
The quieter work is done outside,
Right, the quiet work is done outside.
like interior of the RV and that sort of thing.
It gets a little hot in those buildings.
All right, I understand. Does that complete your presentation?
Yes.
All right, thank you so much.
And hearing officer, the hard copy is in my car, so as soon as we're done, I'll go get it and submit it in the
You need
record.
to submit
You
it
want to
before
submit it
we
right
close
now?
out the
Okay.
hearing. Yes, sir. All right, it will call for anyone that would like to speak in support. Oh, Mr. Farmer, you need to sign in with the clerk's office with your name and address, please. Is there anyone that would like to speak in support? Anyone in favor of this application? Seeing no one in the room, no one online, anyone in opposition? Yes, sir. If you could come forward. While he's coming forward, is there anyone online that would like to speak in opposition? No, okay. If you could start by giving us your name and address, please. Thank you.
Good morning. My name is Christopher Brown. I reside at the property to the north, 111 North Montclair Avenue, Brandon, Florida, 33510. I'm here to speak in opposition to their request for variance. I've lived at this property, long-term since 2003, prior to them taking ownership. As far as their activity has really ramped up over the past few years, I'd say past 5 or 6. They have expanded drastically, and I'm directly impacted by all of their activity and noise. The property is maybe 60 feet, the building from the property line, not in addition to the alleyway. And my bedrooms are on that side of the home. I also work from home, so the noise impacts that as well. As far as the activity that they're trying to mitigate, there's nothing in place right now currently. There's no landscape buffering. They simply have a 6-foot tall chain link fence. Does nothing to impact the noise whatsoever. As far as the activity prior to, yes, they covered in the work bays, but that's not the only place that they work on the RVs. They will do it outside of the work bays. I have video evidence of that I would like to bring into the record. As far as the request for them to not work on the RVs, again, as you've described, there's no way to enforce that whatsoever. And as far as the setback is concerned, the only reason they're requesting this is because of the code enforcement violation. And this is their means to correct that. They're basically requesting the variance simply so they can continue to conduct business in the way that they have been for the past 2 years plus.
Were you a part of the noise complaint? And did you
Yes.
notice any difference once the the sound blankets went up?
So no, and that's simply because they consistently work outside of those work bays. They will do this at all hours of the day and night. I've been in contact with the EPC regarding their noise monitoring, and basically they've told this to me. There's nothing in writing, but I've spoken with the person that came out to do the monitoring. They will stop activity when they see them arrive. They park in the street. They have heavy equipment that they set up. It's very obvious, especially considering they have no buffering in place. So the second they see that they're there, they stop all activity. If you look at the reports, the decibel level is just 1 decibel below the allowed, and that's accounting for background noise and traffic. So any activity that they conduct on top of that puts them into violation. So that's why they immediately stop work the second they see that they're out there to monitor.
All right. And you mentioned a video that you have.
Yes.
Have you submitted that? Do you have a way to submit that on a thumb drive?
I do, yes. I attempted to submit it prior, but they said this was the only opportunity to do
Yeah,
so.
if you could submit it into the record, I'll allow it. How long is the video about?
Well, there's quite a bit of video, to be quite honest there, but the ones that I would like for you to focus on are in the folder. That's the main folder there for the hearing. There should be more than one video on there. Should be that top folder.
You have, you have about a little over 11 minutes left.
Certainly. We
Don't
can.
feel the need to show a video for 11 minutes.
No,
but-
I'm not. I don't want to do that to you guys. Trust me.
Okay.
But if I can just. Trying to select which ones to show you guys.
Thank you.
Appreciate y'all's patience.
Thank you for coming down. I appreciate it.
Play that first one. That will be the video that ultimately prompted the EPC case for noise violation. In their proposed conditions, it only mentions RVs, and yes, that's in their name, RV Select, but that's not all that they detail. They do boats and cars. In this case, you can see them pressure washing a boat, and you can see the lack of buffering and setback. They park the RVs right up to the setback.
Is this taken from your house?
Correct.
Okay.
If you let it play, you'll see the correlation of my home to the property line. Again, to that edge where the plants are, that's maybe 40 feet. and then with the 15 or 45 feet, and then with the 15-foot alley at 60 foot.
Okay.
Coincidentally enough, it was raining whenever they were pressure washing this. Not that I think that that matters, but just proof again that they conduct this activity in all conditions, night and day. Don't know why it's not playing correctly, but again, it's pressure washing like they described. You can see the activity of it. If you want to move on to another one. Oh, there we go. As you can see, that's an ancillary structure on my house, a storage shed. There's the bay in place where they've installed the sound blankets. Originally, they only put them, shoulder high and higher, which did nothing. So then they prompted to install more. But in this case, you can see them pressure washing outside of the work bay itself anyways. Again, there's no way to enforce this whatsoever. There should be one, and one of the last ones on there of them just running RVs at night. That's another point of concern of mine, is that they back these RVs up right up to the property line, and they will run them idling at all hours of night. This was at about 12:30 at night. Again, this is backed up right to my home. Again, there's no way for me to know what decibel level that would be, but you can hear it all through the house. And at this point in time, they have 3 idling for whatever reason. But what they will tend to do also is they'll rev the engines up, I assume, to warm them up. For whatever reason, they have large train horns on them that they'll honk frequently. So again, these are not, I feel like, proper buffering to be put in place anyways, just because they are the things that create the noise solely. As you can see, they're 12, 13 foot tall, even with 6-foot fence, which again, this is just chain link. The exhaust would simply come over that, or as you can see in the video with the pressure washing, they were on a trailer. It was well above 6 foot anyways. And that pretty much carries on. You can see the extent of them working outside of the bays. There's video on there even from July 4th weekend. If you want to go to the very last video, where you can see they had completely emptied out the car lot. Again, there's no way to enforce that these RVs will be there at all times. They can move in and out. Should be the last video. That was it. 1 second, please. Interesting. I'll try the one of. Try it again. Maybe just close it up.
Bless you.
Well, I can't really explain it, but either way, as far as why the video is not playing, but again, all that's in place is chain link fence. There's currently 0 buffer. The 2.5 foot they're describing is simply the partition behind the existing structure to the fence line. So again, this request is simply so that they can accommodate the condition they're currently at without having to do any sort of anything to correct it, and in response to the code enforcement violation.
I see. All right. I don't think I have any other questions. That completes your testimony. If you could please sign in with the
Certainly.
clerk's
Thank you
office
very much.
and also submit a copy of that drive. Appreciate it. All right. Thank you so much. Just to last call, is there anyone else that would like to speak in opposition? Seeing no one. County staff, anything further?
No, nothing further.
All right. Thank you. Mr. Pressman, you have 5 minutes for rebuttal. You did hear the gentleman's testimony. I know you stepped out to get your presentation.
Yes,
You
I did.
hear? Okay.
I think it's most important to note that there is no longer a noise infraction here, that the applicant has worked with the county and the code enforcement department to alleviate any noise infraction, and that's been verified for you. The other important thing to remember, of course, is that the property zone CG, the activity that they're maintaining is permissible under zoning. Granted, they're asking for a difference in setback, but that's been addressed by the many extended improvements they've made that have alleviated or addressed that condition. They could be maintaining this activity 17 feet further from the property line and have no sound barrier blankets, have no interior structure, have no styrofoam, and just be doing it out in the open. That would certainly be permissible. But the applicant is working with code enforcement and indirectly with the neighbor who we have respect for, who came down today and has raised concerns. I think this is also a case that this is a property that's properly zoned and is very shallow. It's always been very shallow. It's barely off of State Route 60. And a neighbor moving behind this property, any neighbor moving behind this property, is going to be affected or impacted by State Road 60 and commercial activities. They're located very close to the site, and they're located next to abutting a very intensive commercial strip. I would say, with all due respect to the neighbor, that and I do mean with all due respect, perspective-wise, when you choose to live at a site that is less than a stone's throw from State Route 60, you're going to have impacts from commercial activity. Mr. Farmers indicated that they did offer to the applicant or to the neighbor to put up a 6-foot fence, and that was not desired or accepted. And you're still willing to do that?
Yeah.
And Mr. Farmers indicating they're still willing to do a 6-foot fence and happy to do it. And they have no restrictions on the property like any other CG or virtually any other CG in terms of hours of restrictions or ability to not be maintaining the activity on the property. That's all I have, Mr. Farmer, unless you want to make a
Jerry Farmer. So when he showed, we went through zoning codes with the neighbor, we had him go. So when he showed half of the sound barrier, Reggie came in our office and he showed where we had it all ordered. During COVID, we had ordered it all. We only had gotten half the batch. As soon as it came in, then we applied the rest of it on there. So it was all ordered at one time. It's just that with COVID, you couldn't get it all at one time. So when he showed only half of one being done, it was already done. Second of all, the building that we're in has been there 25 to 30 plus years on the property line. It's not like we put it up. It's been there 25 to 30 plus years. And when you see stuff in nighttime, it's our guys coming in at nighttime off the road and just backing it in and leaving the facility, so they're parking at night. So when guys come off the road, they're parking them there and then they're heading home. So they may have been on the road for 8 hours and coming in that night and parking the units.
I see. All right. I don't have any other questions.
Thank you. Appreciate your attention.
Thank you for your time and testimony. With that, we'll close variance 21-0573, and we are skipping the next case. Is that
Okay,
correct?
our next case is item H3, variance 21-0607. This case was moved to the end of today's hearing. So then we'll move to item H4, variance application 21-0652. The applicant is Laura Berta. Request is a variance to lot development standards. Staff findings will be presented by Kevy DeFrank.
All right.
Hello again, Kevy DeFrank with Development Services. And for this case, the applicant is requesting setback variances for a proposed covered patio on property zone PD 98-1539. And per condition 3.2 of PD 98-1539, the required rear yard setback for villas or duplexes and townhomes shall be 10 feet. And per the Land Development Code, covered patios may intrude no more than 13 feet into the required rear yard, except that in no case shall the provided setback be less than 10 feet. And specifically, the applicant requests a 7.08 foot reduction to the required rear yard setback to allow a setback of 2.92 feet from the east property line for the covered patio. And our staff findings include that the subject property is developed with an attached single-family villa or duplex. And that is it. And I'm available for any questions.
No questions at this time. Thank you. Good morning.
Good morning. I'm here to represent my mother, Ruth Patch, who's the owner of the property in question.
All right, could you start by giving us your name and address,
Yes,
please?
my name is Laura Berta. I'm at 9978 Stockbridge Drive in Tampa.
Okay.
And the property in question is 10717 Ashford Oaks Drive. And it's in the Westmont Oaks subdivision. So I'm here today to represent my mother, who purchased one of the villas in that subdivision. While inspecting the property, and we did walk through, we noticed that both properties to the left and right already had screened-in porch. So we assumed that submitting a permit would be the appropriate thing to put the porch in. We had no idea that it was in, putting the screened-in porch on an existing slab would violate the setback. We followed procedure, filed for the setback, and we're here today to ask to put that screened-in porch, which will not impact anyone other than the property in question. The property in question backs up into the woods, and so there's no one directly behind her. And as I mentioned, the properties to the left and right already have this screened-in patio. She's also had conversations with those residents to see if they would object to that, at which point they said, absolutely not. How could we? We already have, patios ourselves. So we're just here today to request that the variance move forward.
All right. Well, you answered my question about the neighbors, so thank you. In looking at your survey, I see the concrete pad for the patio right now.
Mhm.
So does the enclosure match that concrete patio? My
Yes.
question is, are you expanding the concrete?
No, we're trying to put it on the existing slab as it stands today.
All right, thank you. That was my only question. All right, perfect. If you could please sign in with the
Sure.
clerk's office, I appreciate it. All right, is there anyone here that would like to speak in support? Anyone in favor? Seeing no one, anyone in opposition to the request? No one. Mr. DeFrank, anything further?
No, nothing further.
All right, then with that, we'll close variance 21-0652 and go to the next case.
Our next case is item H5, variance application 21-0713. The applicant is William and Paula Hernandez. The request is a variance to accessory structure requirements. Staff findings will be presented by Steve Beachy.
Morning.
Good morning, Steve Beachy, Development Services. The applicant is requesting multiple variances to accommodate two existing accessory structures on a property zoned RSC 6. The first variance is for a two-story metal building per Land Development Code 60104B. The accessory structures more than 15 feet in height shall meet principal building setbacks. According to the applicant, the two-story metal building shown on the property on the submitted survey is 20 feet in height. The required setbacks are 25 feet to the rear yard and 15 feet to the side yard. The applicant is requesting a 20-foot reduction of the 20.1 foot reduction of the required rear yard to allow a setback of 4.9 feet. The applicant is also requesting a 3.9 foot reduction of the required side yard to allow a setback of 3.6 feet. I'm sorry, let me step back. The actual required setback for the side yard is 7.5 feet for a property zoned RSC 6. The second building that they're asking for a setback is a metal shed on the southwestern corner of the property. They're asking for a 1.8 foot reduction to the required setback to allow a setback of 1.2 feet from the south lot line. This metal shed is actually not higher than 15 feet, so it is required to have a 3-foot setback on the rear and side yards. They're also asking for a 1.6 foot reduction to the required setback to allow a setback of 1.4 feet from the west lot line. Finally, the an accessory structure may occupy the rear yard provided that such structure does not occupy more than 20% of the required rear yard. The applicant requests a 12.5% increase to the maximum coverage to allow a 32.5% coverage of the required rear yard. in terms of findings, the applicant is subject to a code compliance violation for construction of an accessory structure without permits. If the variance is approved, the applicant is aware that they will be required to obtain after-the-fact building permits. Additionally, the carport attached to the two-story metal building is included in the calculations for the required rear yard coverage. This concludes my comments. I'm available for any questions.
No, my only comment was, you pointed out, was that side yard setback requirement note in the staff report, but you already pointed that out. So that was it. All right, is the applicant here? Good morning.
William Hernandez, 8314 Flowerfield Drive, Tampa, 33615.
Okay.
And
Paula Hernandez.
Thank you. All right, can you tell us about the request?
yes, ma'am. So we bought the property roughly just over 2 years ago, and it already had a shed in the southwest corner, old little shed, and then it had a carport that was already there where we built the metal structure. It was very old and rusty. And so we decided to tear that down and build an actual metal structure for our, cars and stuff. It's safer. The builder said we didn't need a permit because we already had a structure there. And so we were just replacing it. And so they said they would have the plans available to us if we needed them, but that, so we just went with that and built the structure.
Is the structure that you tore down approximately the same size as the one you built?
Yes, man, it was a 3-car shed, a carport that was like maybe 14 feet high. Had been there for a long time.
And you replaced it with a 3-car?
Yes, ma'am. It's a 3-car. It's just higher because we built the middle garage door high so we could put an RV in there. So that's what made it so tall.
Oh, I see.
The RV door is 14 feet, but the next, I guess they're measuring from the very top of the roof. It's a V roof, so it makes it higher.
And have you talked to your neighbors about this?
I only have one neighbor that touches my property to the west. And he had submitted a letter in approval. He has no problems whatsoever with it. It's not even on the side that we share. It's on the opposite side next to the gas station. We have an 8-foot wall that surrounds our property, a concrete block. And we also have a letter of approval from the homeowners association that they came out, checked out everything, and they have no problems whatsoever. You can't even see it from the front of the house.
And those letters, I don't see it in my backup, but they're in the county file?
Yes, ma'am.
You've submitted, okay, I can find them. I just didn't see
Yes,
them as a
ma'am.
part of this.
I have a copy if you want it.
If you want to submit it into the record, it doesn't hurt.
Okay.
Absolutely. All right, does that complete your presentation?
Yes, ma'am.
All right, thank you very much for your testimony. If you could please sign in, and if you want to submit to the clerk those documents, that would be helpful.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. All right, is there anyone that would like to speak in support? Anyone in favor? Seeing no one, anyone in opposition? Seeing no one. All right, Mr. Beachy, anything further?
No, nothing further.
All right, then with that, we'll close variance 21-0713 and go to the next case.
Next case is item H6, variance 21-0714. The applicant is Michelle Anderson. The request is a variance to lot development standards. Let me point out that the agenda also references a variance to natural resource regulations, but that is actually not being requested.
Okay,
Staff findings will be presented by Chris Grangillard.
good morning.
Oh, I'm sorry. Yeah, Chris had to take leave this morning on an emergency, so I'll actually present his case for him.
All right, thank you.
The applicant is requesting a setback variance to accommodate a proposed garage addition to an existing single-family dwelling zoned RSC 6. The Land Development Code requires a minimum front yard setback of 25 feet in the RSC district. The applicant requests a 10-foot reduction to the required front yard setback to allow a 15-foot setback from the eastern property line along Flamingo Drive. The applicant survey indicates that an existing swimming pool in the rear yard is encroaching in a required wetland setback area. However, the applicant has elected to not include a wetland setback variance for that encroachment in this application. That concludes my finding.
All right, thank you so much. Is the applicant here? Good morning.
Michelle Anderson, 6336 Flamingo Drive, and Joseph Bernhardt, my fiance, 6336 Flamingo Drive.
All right.
So we purchased this property last year, actually tomorrow. Tried to do our due diligence and underestimated our needs for storage. So we had wanted to put in, enclose the existing hard roofed carport to a garage. But we found that our vehicles currently extend beyond the depth of the garage space because they put two doors in the garage carport space that open out into there, obstructing our path and storage. So we would like to extend toward the street. We have a 21-foot setback from right away, which I guess we're unaware of at the time of purchase, that we had that deep of a right-of-way to the road. Then our right-of-way from the home started at that point. We're looking to extend our carport space of the garage to the existing walk path from the front door to include a side entrance from our garage to the existing walk path to the front of our home. Both of our neighbors, north and south of us, our neighbor to the north of us has a structure that even exceeds that distance to the road and is agreeable to what we had proposed for our garage setback, as well as the neighbor to the south of us. The road curves, they are in agreement, and they are agreeable to us extending our garage forward to the roadway. In reference to the pool that became a non-issue. We have a canal behind us. We didn't put the pool's been in effect since the house has been there since 1974. The pool was 1980 something. So we're just looking to go toward the road for the garage.
All right. Well, you answered all my questions. I had a question as to why you wouldn't just enclose the existing carports, but I understand that. And if you had talked to your neighbors, so I don't have anything further. Just so you understand, this variance has nothing to do, as the staff report said, with the swimming pool or the rear yard.
Yep.
Either way. So
Okay.
just so that's clear. All right. Does that complete your presentation?
Yes, ma'am, unless you have any other questions.
No, not at this time, but thank you. If you could please sign in.
Thank you.
All right. Is there anyone that would like to speak in support? Anyone in favor of this application? Seeing no one, anyone in opposition? No one online? All right. Mr. Hisney, anything further?
No, ma'am.
All right, then we'll close variance 21-0714. Go to the next.
Next case is item H7, variance 21-0802. The applicant is Ronald Wang, requesting a variance to lot development standards. Staff findings will be presented by Steve Beachy.
Good morning again, Steve Beachy, Development Services. The applicant is requesting multiple variances to accommodate a proposed 3-lot subdivision for a property zoned ASC 1 that is located in the urban service area and designated RS or Res 4 in the comprehensive plan. First variance is for the minimum lot area for the 3 lots. Per Land Development Code, Section 60103N, the required minimum lot area shall not include submerged lands, conservation areas, or preservation areas, except as otherwise permitted in certain agricultural districts. Per Land Development Code 60101, the required minimum lot area in an ASC 1 district is 1 acre, of which 20% may consist of conservation and preservation areas or other wet areas, which receive density credits under the comprehensive plan. Per comprehensive plan policy 8.6, when properties include lakes, only land above the mean high water line may be used in determining acreage size. In the subject case, the wetlands shown on the submitted survey are submerged lands in Long Pond and therefore do not receive density credits under the comprehensive plan. It cannot contribute to lot size calculations for the proposed lot. Therefore, the applicant is requesting a 0.2 acre reduction in the required lot area for lot 1 to allow a lot area of 0.8 acres. The same reduction for lot 2 and a 0.1 acre reduction in the required lot area for lot 3 to allow 0.9 acres. The proposed lot area of each lot will be comprised entirely of uplands. The second variance is for minimum lot area to include an easement. Per Land Development Code 60103N, privately owned access easements may be included in lot width calculations, but shall not be included in calculating compliance with the minimum lot area of individual lots. The proposed subdivision will contain a 30-foot wide easement across portions of lot 1 and 2. The applicant requests to include approximately 8,022 square feet of the easement area in lot size calculation for lot 1 and 5,037 square feet of the easement area in lot size calculation for lot 2. Finally, the minimum lot width per Land Development Code 60101, a minimum lot width of 150 feet is required in the ASC 1 district. The applicant seeks a 14-foot reduction to the required lot width for lot 3 to propose for the proposed subdivision to allow a width of 136 feet. In terms of findings, per Land Development Code 110401, density variances may be requested. The subject property is designated Res 4 in the comprehensive plan, which allows a potential maximum of 10 dwelling units. Therefore, the requested lot size reductions to create a 3-lot subdivision do not constitute a density variance. That concludes my comments. I'm available for any questions.
Just one question, if you know if the proposed lots would connect to public water and sewer.
Yes, they would. That is, yes.
All right, thank you so much. Is the applicant here? I understand the applicant is virtual.
Mr. Wang?
Yes.
Good morning. If you give us your name and address to begin, please.
Okay. Harold Wayne, address 1601 Sefner, Valrico Road, 33584. Yep, and the number is 210802.
All right, if you could tell us a little bit about your request.
Okay, we trying to develop, subdivide the 5-acre lot to 3, and we requesting a variance to lot develop the standards. And I think Mr. Stephen just stated very clearly. These include the 3 variants. One is allow a 30 feet easement to be included in the minimum lot area calculation. And the second one, the variance to allow a 14 feet reduction to the 150 feet minimum lot width required for a parcel zoned ASC 1, resulting in a 136 feet width requirement for lot 3. And the third one, the variance to allow the lot area by zoning from 1 acre to 0.8 acre. Yep, that's it.
And just a quick question, Mr. Wang, how many, if you know, how many lots could you get on the property if you don't receive the variance? With no variance, how many lots can you get?
2.
2?
Yes.
All right, thank you. And then final question, have you talked to your neighbors about this request?
I sent all the mail to them. Yeah.
Did you hear back from anyone?
2 of them call me, check what I'm going to do because they don't quite understand what is a variance to lot development standards. Yeah. And I explained to them.
All right, but nobody spoke in opposition to you? No one was against it?
Okay, thank you. No.
No one went, okay. All right, thank you so much. All right, thank you. Then we'll ask for anyone that would like to speak in support of this application. No one, anyone in opposition? No one. All right. Mr. Beachy, anything further?
Nothing further.
All right, Mr. Wang, you have the last word. Would like to add anything?
Oh, that's it. Thank you.
All right, thank you for your time. We'll close variance 21-0802 and go to the next case.
Our next case is item H8, variance application 21-0900. The applicant is Luza Alonso, requesting a variance to lot development standards. Staff findings will be presented by Kevin DeFrank.
All right, Mr. DeFrank.
Kevin DeFrank with Development Services again. So for this case, the applicant is requesting setback variances to accommodate existing additions to a single-family home on property zone PD 83-0200. And per the approved site plan associated with the identified PD, the minimum required setbacks for the subject lot are 10 feet for the front yard, 5 feet for the side yard, and 10 feet for the rear yard. And per the Land Development Code, covered patios may intrude no more than 13 feet into the required rear yard and shall not intrude into required side or front yards. And in no case shall the permitted intrusion reduce the provided setback to less than 10 feet. And specifically, the applicant requests a 4.2 foot reduction to the required side yard to allow a setback of 0.8 feet from the north property line, a 4.6 foot reduction to the required side yard to allow a setback of 0.4 feet from the south property line, and a 7 foot reduction to the required rear yard to allow a setback of 3 feet from the west property line. And our findings include that a notice of violation from the Building Services Division associated with the subject property was provided and has been placed in the case record for the subject variance. And that concludes my report, and I'm available for questions.
No questions at this time. Thank you. Is the applicant here? Morning. Yes, if you could please come forward, give us your name and address.
Good morning, officer. My name is Anay Carbonell, and I live at 9605 Kingsborough Court, Tampa, Florida 33615.
Okay.
I am here this morning to request the approval of a variance application to bring my property into compliance with the Land Development Code and to be able to submit the required building permits to comply with the building codes. I have some pictures that I can show.
Okay.
I built the following structures without permit: a small carport at the north side of the house to protect the jet ski from the weather conditions. My house does not have a garage. A smart roof at the south side of the house to protect the door from the rain, and a smart carport at the southwest corner to the house to protect the bicycles. In addition, in the rear part of the house, which includes the bathroom, a closet for storage, and since my house does not have a garage or other storage place, an outdoor kitchen and an area where my family can spend some time outdoors and relax. My house is small and the property is only 0.11 acres, and it is impossible to have any porches or additions without encroaching into the setbacks. I didn't know anything about required setbacks or permits when I built these structures. As soon as we were notified of the violation, we took action and rectified the problem and started the process to get our permits. Traditionally, we are used to cook and eat, spend some outdoors, so the addition has improved our quality of life. We spend a lot of time there and we load our space. My house inside looks cleaner since I put out, since I moved all the things that I didn't use on a daily basis to the new storage. We don't have the means to buy a larger house or a larger property. We invested our savings on these structures, and I would greatly appreciate your consideration in approving this variance. Also, I spoke with all our neighbors, and we got some letters from them in which, they don't have any objection of our constructions. Mhm.
All right. Let me ask you a question. The pictures you're showing all look in the same area of your house. Ah. And where is this relative to your house?
That is um, the small cupboard, the southwest corner.
Southwest corner. Okay.
Located on the south side of the house to protect the door from the rain. That's the small bathroom. The north side to protect the jet ski.
I see. And you understand that if the variance were approved, you would have to obtain building permits
Yes.
for these after the fact?
Absolutely.
Okay. All right. Does that complete your presentation?
Yes, I just wanted to show you about the letters from the neighbors.
Oh, sure. And these are from your immediate neighbors surrounding you?
Sorry?
These are from the neighbors that are
Correct.
about your house? Okay. All right. If you can submit those into the record when you sign in, then they'll be a part of it.
All right.
And I'll be
Thank
able to
you.
review them. Okay. All right. And thank you so much for your time. If you can submit all of those when you sign in with the clerk's office. Thank you. All right. Is there anyone that would like to speak in support? Anyone in favor? Fine. No one in the room. Anyone in opposition to this request? Seeing no one. Mr. DeFrank, anything else?
No, nothing further.
All right. Then with that, we'll close variance 21-0900 and go to the next case.
The next case is item H9, variance application 21-0905. The applicant is TM Crowley and Associates. They are requesting variances from various development standards in the mixed use MUD code, variances for accessory structures, variances to kennel requirements, and variance to fences and walls. Staff findings will be presented by Israel Monsanto.
Morning.
Good morning, Israel Monsanto Development Services. The applicant is requesting multiple variances to allow development of a kennel in an existing mixed-use development district, MUD 03-1432.
Yeah, hold on, Israel. Yeah, we're having trouble picking you up on the audio.
Second. Can you hear me now?
You still sound very muffled.
Can you hear me now?
Madam Hero.
Keep talking for us.
Can you hear me now? I have my mic on.
Keep talking. Go ahead. We're testing your audio.
Okay, the applicant is requesting multiple variances to allow development of a kennel in an existing mixed-use development district, MUD 03-1432.
Okay.
Mixed-use developments are regulated by Land Development Code, Part 50800. The subject MUD presently has two sub-areas, neighborhood and commercial. The applicant wishes to develop a kennel in the project. However, a kennel is not a permitted use in the neighborhood and commercial sub-areas. Therefore, the applicant has filed an application, which is a preliminary plat, to revise the MUD master plat by adding a green space sub-area which does allow kennels. The revised plat would reassign a portion of the neighborhood sub-area as green space and also add more commercial land. Also, as part of the plat revision, the applicant proposes a new east-west street, creating a new block. The new street would need to align with an existing drive aisle from the Walmart site to the east in order to meet block average length and connectivity ratios requirements of the MUD regulations. During the plat revisions review, the applicant was advised by staff that the proposed parcel in the green space area would not meet dimensional standards, and Section 50807 requires a minimum of 300 feet of lot depth for parcels located in the green space sub-area. Therefore, the need for a variance, which is variance A in the summary table. The proposed parcel in the green space will only be 258 feet in depth. Additionally, in order to accommodate the proposed the kennel use in the future green space parcel, the applicant is requesting variances to other development standards. These include principal building setback from the north, which is variance B, in the site plan setback for the west property line for a solid waste enclosure, which is variance C, fence height in the north required front yard, which is variance D, and fence material for kennels, variance E. It should be noted, hearing officer, that variances B, C, D, and E are dependent on your approval of variance A. And without approval of the minimum lot depth, for the green space parcel, the establishment of the new plat creating the green space sub-area cannot be completed and approved by the subdivision review section, in which case a kennel will remain a prohibited use in the subject property. And I'm available if you have any questions.
Only one minor point regarding variance B in the table. It looks like under requirements, there's a typo where it says minimum rear setback, and I believe you mean minimum front setback. Is that correct? Under B.
Yes, that will be correct because that will be, the site has 3 front yards, correct.
All right. Yeah, just a minor point. That was my only question. So thank you so much. Is the applicant here? Morning. Oh, the microphone is not on.
Turn it on.
There
Thank
you go.
David Smith, 401 East Jackson Street, 33601. Planner with Stearns Weaver Miller for the applicant. I do have a PowerPoint presentation and I'll use that principally. You can go to the next slide, please. This gives you the general location. This is on Bloomingdale Avenue out towards Lithia Pinecrest. I guess, unfortunately, the Keystone area to locate this is the Walmart location that was redeveloped in Brandon out there in Bloomingdale some time ago. Next slide, please. So also shows the surrounding uses of the property. And as you can see, there's commercial along the front. The Walmart is to the east. And then immediately behind the property is what's going to be the residential or the mixed use component of the project. I'd like to show you an aerial that's not in the PowerPoint. This gives you a better picture of the actual location. The star indicates the location of the green space lot that's being proposed to be created. It shows the surrounding uses, ponds to the east, commercial to the south, and then Walmart to the northeast.
Mr. Smith, can you point to that star? I think I see it. I just want to make sure. I see. Thank you. Go ahead.
That was quick graphics while I was sitting there.
Yeah, fair enough.
So what we have here is, I think staff has done a good job in the report of explaining the situation. If you can go to the next slide. So this gives an overall view of the various variances that are being requested. This is actually the site plan component of it. I wanted to give you that as a context, just looking at what's planned. And if you'll go to slide 13. Here we go. Staff discussed the preliminary plat that was proposed for this project. And this is where all the, I guess, the waterfall of variances occurs as a result of the plat. In green is the green space lot being created. This is in the MUD mixed T&D code. And not surprisingly, these zoning districts are inactive zoning districts now. They're very complicated to implement. And in developing this site, the initial developer of the plats, the initial lots being laid out, really didn't take into consideration of what would occur down the road as additional lots were platted. And as a result, in order to meet the spacing requirements and the nodes and the ratios, it was required to put a street on the north side of this green space lot. Unfortunately, in order to meet the nodes plus technical requirements, you could not place this street any further north than to achieve less than the 300 feet. It had to line up with the adjacent Walmart entranceway. As a result, we end up with a green space lot that is short. And if you can go back to slide 4, please. Okay. So what you end up with is a lot that results in a depth that is too short for by 42 feet to meet the minimum spacing requirement, minimum depth requirements for a green space lot. It's also interesting in this code that kennels are not allowed in the commercial component, but they are allowed in green space lots. So this particular block is comprised of one green space lot and one commercial lot. And each one has different standards for the particular development going in place. We believe the difficulties created by this, the situation that we have for the lot not meeting the depth requirements, is solely related to the placement of the road and having to match up with Walmart. We could have placed it further north, but then that would misalign the two streets, and therefore there is the practical difficulty with respect to the site request to be developed. So in order to align with the Walmart driveway, a lot depth can only be 250 foot and 58 feet in depth. Ergo, we need 42 foot variance granted. Now, what staff has also pointed to is that if this variance is not granted, then all the other variances I'm about to discuss would not be granted. They'd be moot because actually all of these but one is a direct result of the fact that we had to put an additional street in to create the lot and create the nodes. And that resulted in a series of variances because this property ends up with 3 front yards. In the development code MUD, you have to have a 50-foot front yard setback. So we have 3 front yards. For all practical purposes, while they are 3 street frontages with 3 front yards, 1 yard essentially serves as a side yard for this project. The northern lot essentially serves as a rear yard, and the front yard is the front facing to the south, which is where all the commercial development is facing along Bloomingdale. And then we have a 25-foot minimum side yard, which abuts the commercial development or lot that is also being platted. So what we have, and if you go slide 7. So the first setback reduction that we request for is a reduction from 50 feet to 35 feet for a front yard setback on the north of the site. This is where the new road's going in. The request of this variance is reflective of the fact that this lot in and of itself, a green space lot, is already 42 feet shorter than would otherwise be required to meet the code. Therefore, the building pad that would be anticipated to be allowed in this lot is essentially pushed further south and shrunk. In order to provide the development opportunities anticipated for this development, and also to reflect that this functions essentially as a rear yard, the request for a setback reduction from 50 to 35 feet is the reason for the request. We believe that the 3 street frontages that exist, which is very rare in Hillsborough County to have a lot that has 3 street frontages, I'll get there right yet, it is the difficulty, practical difficulty with the development of this lot. We go to page 8 of the presentation. This is a request for a front yard setback reduction to allow accessory structures in the front yard. And again, this is the western front yard. The western front yard, and if you could, I hate to ask you to go back to the site plan, which was
like 13.
No, that was the.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Page 4.
It's off the
Sorry.
top of my head.
Yeah, page 4. Okay, so as you can see in this graphic, we have the dumpster location in the western yard. This, for all practical purposes, for our development would function as a side yard. And the code does allow for accessory structures in side yards where they, front yards where they function as a side yard. This is an unusual development pattern, though, because it's a T&D development, and front yards are typically what you're trying to push and have development pushed up against the street, except in a green space lot where you have to push it back. As you can see from the site plan, the development pattern here would have it restricted. You could not have the accessory structure in any of the 3 sides, north, south, or west, and you could only put it in the eastern yard. But the eastern yard, because it's sharing some cross-access with the adjacent property, would be very difficult and practically impossible to put it in there and be able to access it through the site and exiting out the other property. We believe, again, this is a direct result of having 3 front yards and prohibiting us from being able to locate it where it would traditionally be located. We'll just keep that site plan up there. Variance 4 is an increase in fence height. And this is once again in the northern yard. So for a kennel use, you have outdoor areas, exercise yards. And the code would allow only 4-foot high fences. So as you can see from the site plan on the northern yard, we have the exercise yards and then down the side, and those little dark shadowed areas are actually covered areas so that you can get the animals out of the sun. And in order to provide safety and security and protect the public health, safety, welfare, we're requesting a 6-foot fence, which would be otherwise allowed in a rear yard. Once again, for this development pattern with 3 front yards as it is, this would really function as a rear yard for us. And we believe that a 6-foot fence would be in the public health, safety, and welfare to protect not only the animals, but for the public in the area, other people using the commercial space. The next variance is related to fence material. And it's kind of odd. In the kennel regulations, they specify particularly that you can use chain link, masonry, or wood. And it does not provide for PVC fencing. This request is to allow PVC fencing to be utilized for these fences in this yard. We'll also continue it down the side yard as well, where the exercise area continues. We believe that this is in keeping with the intent of the code to provide security and safety in places where fences are being provided, but also to provide for architecturally pleasing treatments of these fences and walls, in particular when it's going to be in a rear yard functioning as a front yard. We believe in our narrative, we provided the extensive justification under all the criteria, and we'd be here a long time if I have read every one of those, and I'm sure you have read those. I'll be glad to answer any questions, but again, just in summary, the green space lot setback as a result of having to place it to align with the Walmart Street creates essentially all of these situations, because otherwise we would have side yards we'd have 2 fronts and 2 sides, and the ability to design the site within these regulations would be quite easy. Also to note that there's not any hardship, or not any adverse impact to adjacent neighbors, because the adjacent neighbors, one on the east side, is actually going to be a commercial lot. And the commercial lot has a maximum setback of 25 feet. So in the same block, we'd have a maximum setback of 25 feet, and then we'd have a 50-foot setback for our lot. Whereas if you grant the variance requested, they'd be more similar in setbacks along the northern frontage, which I think is more in keeping and looking at the character of the development pattern that's out there today. Be glad to answer any questions. We've had no calls from any neighbors.
All right, you've answered all my questions. I had a couple, but you've covered them in your presentation, so
Okay,
thank
thank
you
you.
very much. All right, at this time, we'll call for anyone who would like to speak in support. Anyone in favor? Seeing no one, anyone in opposition to this request? No one online. All right, Mr. Monsanto, anything else before we close?
Nothing further?
All right, Mr. Smith, does that complete your presentation? Yes. All right, thank you. Then with that, we'll close variance 21-0905 and go to the next case.
The next case is item H10, variance 21-0906. The applicant is WMG Development LLC, requesting a variance to eating establishment standards, specifically the location of a drive-in order box. Staff findings will be presented by Kevy DeFrank.
Hello again, Kevy DeFrank with Development Services. For this case, the applicant is requesting a variance for a proposed restaurant drive-through order box on property zone PD 04-0558. And per the Land Development Code, a restaurant drive-through order box cannot be located within 200 feet of residentially zoned property. And specifically, the applicant requests a 47-foot reduction to the required separation to allow a separation of 153 feet from the vacant residentially zoned property to the west. And in our findings, it includes that the applicant has submitted a letter from the owner of the affected residentially zoned property, just Lennar Homes. And in this letter, they state that they do not object to the requested variance, provided that the minimum screening requirements found in the Land Development Code are not reduced. Additionally, Lennar supports the implementation and maintenance of enhanced buffering beyond what is required in the Land Development Code to account for the reduced separation between the order box and the residentially zoned property. And that concludes my report. I'm available for questions.
No questions at this time, but thank you. The applicant, please. Good morning.
Got it. Good morning, Madam Hearing Officer. My name is Nicole Neugebauer, and I'm an attorney at Stearns Weaver Miller at 401 East Jackson Street, Suite 2100. I am here today as representative of the applicant, WMG Development LLC. Also with me is Dorinda Marvin, who is the Planning and Entitlements Director at WMG. Appearing virtually, we have Jamie Lindenberg, who is the Project Manager for TAR Group LLC, and Tim Hoover, who is the Senior Landscape Architect from TAR Group. Go to the next slide. Here is a vicinity map to just orient you to the property. The site is approximately 1.1 acres located in Riverview towards the corner of Balm Road, which is County Road 672 and US Highway 301. Next slide. The property is zoned PD as part of PD 04-0558, and it was amended in 2015 by PRS 151152. The future land use is SMU 6. And the property is within the urban service area. This project was approved as part of a very large PD master plan that has a mix of uses on it. To the north, we have a convenience store, a gas station, 7-Eleven, and a bank. To the south, it's currently undeveloped, but it's going to be a future commercial property. To the east is undeveloped, and then to the west is the future residential townhomes that would be the affected residential property in this request. There are two proposed uses on the property, a dental office and a Dunkin' Donuts coffee shop. Dunkin' Donuts routinely has a drive-through, which requires an order box. The order box is the reason that we are here today requesting this variance. Section 6.11.35B1 requires 200 feet between a property zoned residential and an order box. Here we have the adjacent property that is a residential use is approximately 153 feet from the order box to their lot line. It's 173 feet from the order box to their 20-foot setback to the actual building. So as part of this, we are requesting a 47-foot variance between the order box and the property that is used as residential. Here's a revised site plan that we submitted in mid-June pursuant to this variance request that illustrates the order box location. As you can see, it's on the west side of the buildings with the cars going through the drive-through area. The order box has to be in this location for several reasons. You'll notice that there are 2 points of ingress and egress on the west side of the project, but neither of these are off of US Highway 301, which is on the east. As part of the PD and the subsequent PRS, the overall project can only have 3 access points along Highway 301, and none of them go to this parcel. So the only access that this parcel has is from a side street that's being constructed that would allow 2 points of ingress and egress into this specific site.
So that's an internal road to the development? That's how they access the site?
Yes, yes. So the to the south and north, you can't see it on this site plan, but to the south, there is a connector from 301 to get to that road that's all the way on the west. And then from the north, up by the Publix, there's also another connector.
I see.
So we don't have a direct access point off of, oh, could you go back, please? It's okay. We don't have a direct access point off of 301, which creates some design limitations. And additionally, in order to safely navigate the site and to keep traffic off of that internal road that's on the west side, it's important to stack the cars as much as possible into the parcel to alleviate traffic, which is why the arrows go all the way around the site and into the drive-through to try and stack as many cars off of that road as possible. You'll also notice that there is an internal cross access that is going to the southeast of the property. That is an access point that is being provided. There is a condition that'll be on the next slide. Go to that one. Condition 23 in the PRS requires a internal vehicular cross access along parcel F. Now, this is up to dispute as to which road this is talking about, either the one that was all the way to the west that is that internal cross access, or if it is requiring us to have cross access with the property to the south of our project that is not constructed yet. This did not come up at any of our zoning or the 7-Eleven above us, but in the property to the south, as they're moving through their development process, staff brought up this as a condition and said that this meant that they needed to connect to us. So as part of that, we agreed. And so there is also a cross access to the southeast of our project, which moved the building pad to the west. So it moved it closer to the residential property. Go to the next slide. Here's the graphic that shows our project, and then the red line, and it's a little bit hard to see, is the line to the setback, and then the yellow is the line to the actual lot line. Then you kind of see this area, this graphic. A little more development has happened out there. The townhomes, there's utility work, but nothing has gone vertical yet. Lennar is still the owner of that. The Publix has been completed, and the 7-Eleven to the north has also been completed. You go to the next one. And here's another graphic of the property with the site plan overlaid on top of it, just for a better illustration. Again, the red line goes to the setback, and then the yellow line goes to the lot line. The next one. Here we have a letter of no objection from Lennar, who is the current owner of the future residential property that would be affected by the variance. The letter essentially states that Lennar does not object to the minimum screening requirements, does not object provided the minimum screening requirements of the Land Development Code are not reduced. Additionally, they support the implementation and maintenance of an enhanced buffering to account for the reduced separation between the order box and the residential uses. Next slide, please. This is our landscape plan that illustrates the required landscaping for the adjacent residential project and the proposed landscaping for our project. So you can see all of it on one plan. The residential property will have type B buffering, and our property will have a continuous row of hedges and Blanchard magnolias. The hedges will be 6 feet in height or higher, and their spread is typically 3 to 5 feet. The Blanchard magnolias will be approximately 75 to 80 feet at maturity and 35 to 40 feet in width. In addition, the hours of operation for that order box are limited to 5 a.m. to 10 p.m. And then with the buffering, the hope is to reduce any noise from that order box getting to the residential property. Go to the next slide, please. These are all the variance criteria. I won't go through them all in detail, as I've touched on them during the course of the presentation, but I'm happy to go through them if necessary, if you have any questions. Go to the next one. Here is the staff report. Staff made one finding that the applicant submitted a letter from Lennar that states Lennar does not object, provided the minimum screening requirements are satisfied, and they support any enhanced implementation of buffering. Go to the next slide. In closing, the applicant has satisfied all of the criteria for this variance application and respectfully request that you approve this variance. My team and I are available for questions if you have any.
My only question you addressed, which is why you couldn't flip the order box to the 301 frontage, but I think you adequately described that. So thank you very much. If you could please sign in with the clerk's office. Is there anyone here today or virtually that would like to speak in support? Anyone in favor? Seeing no one. Anyone in opposition to this request? No one online? All right. Mr. DeFrank, anything further before we close?
No, nothing further.
All right, thank you. Then with that, we'll close variance. Oh, ma'am, let me just ask you, do you have anything else before I close? You have 5 minutes for rebuttal if you'd like.
No, ma'am, I'm good. Thank you.
Thank you so much for your time and testimony. We'll close variance 21-0906. I think this would be a good time to take a 5-minute break. Give the court reporter a minute. So if you could be back at 11:55 and we'll continue the hearing. Thank you.
Hello, is anyone there? Hello?
Hello, this is Zach from Hillsborough Television.
Yeah, I had a question about, this is Tim Lampkin, and my question had to do with, I just got a laptop and now I'm having an issue with my video. So it's my camera isn't working. It's going directly to my laptop video,
Okay.
not the camera.
So at the bottom of the where the start video, there's a little arrow next to it, Tim.
I see it.
All right, and you should have the cameras you can select for that. So it should say whatever laptop you're using.
Oh, okay, hold on. Now let me, I think I got, it worked. Okay, got it.
All righty.
Thank
No
you so
problem.
much. Bye. There we go. Okay. Yeah, that's better.
Stand by. The meeting is going to start. And in 3, 2, 1.
All right, thank you, everybody, for, we're going to resume the land use hearing officer hearing. And we are ready to call the next case, which starts our special use section of the agenda.
Yes, we're in section J now, and the first case is item J1, special use 21-0711. The applicant is Northdale Tampa Incorporated, and the request is for a 4 COPX alcoholic beverage permit, which requires separation waivers. Staff report and recommendation will be presented by Tanya Chapella following the applicant's presentation.
All right, is the applicant here? Good morning. You'd like to go first? How are you?
Good morning, madam. My name is Joseph Diaz. My offices are at 3242 Henderson Boulevard, Suite 310, Tampa, Florida. I'm here on behalf of the applicant, Northdale Tampa. My client operates a establishment called Tom's Tavern at 3893, 3895 Northdale Boulevard. That location has enjoyed a 4 COPRX zoning designation since 1985. So it's been operating there for 36 years. Unfortunately, when COVID hit last year, it seriously impacted the business. And that zoning classification requires at least 51% food sales. Food sales took a hit. We really haven't been cited by anyone, but and the county certainly hasn't been troubling us, but out of an abundance of precaution with the Division of Alcoholic Beverages and Tobacco, whose license requires us to maintain a 51% food sales, we're here today seeking to change that zoning classification to a 4 COPX. Under the old designation, we had to do 51% food sales and we could do package sales. Under the new classification, we don't have the 51% condition, but then again, we can't do package sales. Strictly going to be consumed on premises. For a zoning of this nature, we have to comply with 3 things: distance separation from residential, 250 feet, which we meet, no problem. We have to then have a distance separation of 500 feet from community uses. We are requesting 2 waivers. My client's business is located in a retail strip center. I guess I would call it on the north side of Northdale Boulevard. The front door faces in a southeasterly direction, but mostly southerly. Northeasterly of us, behind us, there is a child care center. As the crows flies, we don't meet this distance separation requirement, but if you do normal, ordinary traffic, we comply with the distance separation requirement. It's my understanding that no one from that child care center has raised any objection with respect to this request. We then have another community use that we have to deal with, and that is there is a park. That park would be located southwesterly of us. We're separated by a 4-lane divided highway. The park is open. The actual structure on the park where the community rec center is at is more than 500 feet from us, but the property line to the park playground is less than 500 feet. My understanding is that staff reached out to the Parks and Recreation Department in Hillsborough County, and they have indicated that we've been there for years. They've never had any problems with us, and they are not objecting to our request. We then need an additional waiver, and that is the number of permitted alcoholic beverage sales within 1,000 feet. As I said, we have been for 36 years a 4COPRX. We're not going to be able to sell any new type of alcohol that we can't already sell. We were already authorized to sell beer, wine, and liquor, and we will now be authorized to sell beer, wine, and liquor. Even though there are a sizable number of existing zonings within the 1,000-foot area, 2 of those have changed and completely gone out of business. They went to a doggy daycare center and they went to a UPS store. 2 of those are vacant. We would suggest that the granting of this application would have minimal impact in the area, okay? And given our prior history, that you actually go ahead and approve our request. We have signatures from 60 people that live in the neighborhood and or adjoining businesses that are in approval of our request. We would like to submit that to you at the end of this presentation. I believe that would do it.
All right, I just had a quick question. The square footage, is it the same? Is there any plan to expand as a part of this request?
You know, I would have told you it's the same. But if you look at it, apparently the old area that was permitted is about 10 or 12 feet smaller than what we are requesting now. To be honest with you, but let me take that back. The old permitted area is 2,636 square feet. The new requested area is 2,769 square feet. I can't explain that difference to you.
So it's not a purposeful expansion, it's a surveying?
Ma'am, there is no expansion. That's that site that's there. We're not doing any expansion. We're not taking on any new area.
All right, understood. Does that complete your presentation?
Yes, it does.
Thank you so much. If you could please sign in with the clerk's office and submit any documents you'd like.
Thank you.
Thank you. All right, we're ready for development services, please.
Good afternoon. This is Tanya Chapella, Hillsborough County Development Services. The request is for a distance separation waiver for a proposed 4COPX alcoholic beverage permit to allow the sale of beer, wine, and liquor for consumption on the permitted premises only. The proposed wet zoning will replace an existing 4 COPR wet zoning on the subject premises, which allows the sale of beer, wine, and liquor for consumption on and off the permitted premises, package sales in connection with a restaurant. The wet zoning does not comply with the separation requirement from certain community uses, and there are more than 3 existing wet zonings of the specified types within 1,000 feet. A childcare center is located approximately 308 feet to the northwest of the proposed wet zoning, and a county park is located approximately 250 feet to the southwest. Also, there are 9 existing wet zonings of the specified types within 1,000 feet. After considering building orientation, route of travel, and the fact that the proposed wet zoning area is limited to indoor activities only, staff finds the proposed wet zoning poses minimal change in potential impacts to the childcare center compared to the existing wet zoning. The proposed wet zoning is located across a 4-lane divided roadway from the county park, and the principal building in the park are approximately 700 feet away. Parks and Recreation staff does not object to the proposed wet zoning. The proposed wet zoning is located in an established commercial area, which includes numerous businesses that sell alcoholic beverages. Additionally, the proposed wet zoning will replace a wet zoning that permits the on and off premises consumption of beer, wine, and liquor in connection with a restaurant, and therefore represents a minimal change in the established alcohol use. Staff finds the proposed wet zoning does not pose a significant impact on surrounding uses. Staff finds the proposed 4 COPX wet zoning approvable, subject to the condition recommended. This recommendation is based upon the revised survey showing a wet zone area of approximately 2,769 square feet of indoor area and received June 24, 2021. Upon approval of alcoholic beverage permit, special use alcoholic beverage 210711, the existing 4 COPR alcoholic beverage permit on the premises, AB 85-1201 shall be rescinded. This concludes my presentation. I'm available for questions if you have any. Thank you.
No questions. Thank you. No questions at this time. All right. Is there anyone that would like to speak in support of this application? Anyone in favor? Anyone in opposition to the request? Seeing no one. County staff, anything else before we close?
No, ma'am.
Mr. Diaz, anything else from you? All right. Thank you. With that, we'll close special use AB 21-0711 and go to the next case.
The next case is item J2, special use 21-901, 0910. The request is for a 4 COPX alcoholic beverage permit, which requires separation waivers. Staff report and recommendation will be presented by Tim Lampley following the applicant's presentation.
All right. Good afternoon.
Good afternoon, David Smith, 401 East Jackson Street, 33602, Suite 2100. Planner was Stearns Weaver Miller. The application, not too dissimilar from the previous one, is for a 4 COP request, but the difference is the brand new use. This brand new use is part of an adult active lifestyle community down in South Hillsborough County. I'll put this on the Elmo to just give some reference. And this is in the staff report. This request is a restaurant and outdoor area that's being requested to be wet zoned for part of the community amenity. As an active lifestyle community, this facility is only open to the residents of the community, and therefore this is not your typical restaurant or bar use that anyone from the area can come to. Once the community is built out, the facilities are going to be turned over to the HOA, and it will continue to be part of the HOA and amenity for the subject property. The only distance separation requirement that we do not meet of the three is the 250 feet from residential property, which is really not surprising, given that this is right in the middle of a residential community it's designed to serve. As located in the, as shown in the graphic, there's a buffer area between the circled use and the closest single-family home is 75 feet. We believe this is in keeping with the intent, and as a matter of fact, I'll just show you a quick zoning clip. Another very professionally drawn graphic. But the yellow striped area is the area of this active lifestyle community. The amenity is located inside the boundaries of this location. Specifically, the zoning conditions provided for and recognize that a restaurant would be built within the PD, and that is what is occurring today. The other separation waivers we meet. There are no other alcoholic beverage operations within the 1,000 feet, and there are no community uses other than the amenity building that is actually in to ask for a waiver from. I'll be glad to answer any questions. We're not aware of any comments or community opposition. Everybody's just asking when is it going to open for use. Glad to answer any questions.
Just a quick question for my own information. If you said you referred to it as an adult active lifestyle community, is it age restricted?
It's 55.
It's over 55.
Yeah, and we have representatives from the community association and the developer to answer any questions you might have relative to the actual HOA or the use itself. But other than that, this is solely what this is designed to do.
All right, no further questions, but thank you so much. If you could please sign in. All right, Development Services.
Hello, Tim Lampkin, Development Services. Per section 6011, the request is for a distance separation waiver for a 4 COPX alcoholic beverage permit for the sale of beer, wine, and liquor for consumption on the premises only. The property is located at 5010 Sevilla Shores Drive in the Valencia del Sol planned community in the Waimama area. The wet zoned area will comprise a total footprint of 49,632 square feet, including 22,482 square feet of indoor area and 27,149 square feet of outdoor area. The subject property is located within PD 89-0097, last modified by 18-1052. Per condition 1 of the PD, limited residential support uses are allowed, including a restaurant for internal residents of the development. Per section 611.11.d.5, the applicant is required to be at least 500 feet from community uses, 1,000 feet from no more than 3 approved wet zonings, and 250 feet from residential uses. The proposed wet zoning is less than 250 feet from residential zoning and does not comply with this requirement and is seeking a waiver. Staff finds the following. LDC section 611.11.e. Point 3 provides for approval of separation waivers where there are special or unique circumstances where the alcoholic beverage use applied for does not have significant impacts on surrounding land uses, and certain circumstances negate the necessity for the specified distance requirements. The proposed wet zoning is located approximately 75 feet from the nearest residential lot. The applicant is requesting a 175-foot waiver to the required 250-foot distance separation. Further, staff finds the amenity center and restaurant are permitted uses of the subject property per the condition of approval per PD 89-0097, and alcohol and sales and consumption are commonly associated with restaurants. According to the applicant, the amenity center and restaurant will be deeded to the community's homeowners association. Thirdly, all residential lots within 200 feet of the proposed wet zoning are located in the community that will be served by the amenity center and restaurant. And last, the proposed wet zoning will be separated from the rear yards of the nearest homes. As the applicant showed on their plan, it will be separated by extensive screening, and there is a retention pond providing additional screening. Staff does find the proposed wet zoning is consistent with the permitted use of the property, which by terms of PD 89097 as amended may be utilized only by residents of the community. For the reasons stated, staff finds the proposed wet zoning does not pose significant impacts on the surrounding land uses, and the necessity of the separation requirements are effectively eliminated by the items stated. Therefore, staff recommends approval subject to the following condition. Quote, the sale and consumption of alcoholic beverages shall be limited to the residents of the Valencia del Sol community only, unquote. And that concludes staff's presentation, unless there are any questions.
No questions at this time, but thank you. Is there anyone who would like to speak in support? Seeing no one. Anyone in opposition? Are you in opposition? You're in support, yes, if you'd like to speak. All right, if you'd like to put your name and address on the record as, okay, then you'll have to come forward and do that on the record and the microphone. You could just give us your name and address and say that you're in support. That would be fine.
My name is Lisa Prather. My address is 2619 Gulfport Boulevard, Beach Boulevard South in Gulfport, Florida. We are the operator of the restaurant at Del Sol. So we are in support of this proposal.
All right, well, thank you for coming down. If you can please sign in. Anyone else that would like to speak either in support or in opposition? All right, then with that, we'll go back to county staff. Anything further before we close?
No, ma'am.
Mr. Smith, anything else?
Just one comment on the condition. We agree 100% that this is what the intent is, but it's the residents or their guests that will be utilizing the facility. So I didn't want there to be, it's kind of a distinction without purpose. If somebody comes with a resident, they'll be accompanying them using the facility.
Madam Mayor, Master, may I respond?
Yes.
Yes. The wording of the condition exactly reflects the wording of the PD zoning. I understand what you're saying, but we're not in a position to create a condition that conflicts with the wording of the PD zoning.
No, that's not a problem.
Yeah, we have to leave it the way it is.
Okay. We may end up, if it becomes an issue, we'll ask for an interpretation to make sure that it covers that. But I think that's the intent. It's only the residents who will be able to utilize the facility, and people have to be there with them.
I see.
Thank you.
All right, thank you for that. Then we will close special use AB 21-0910 and go to the next case.
Next case and the last special use today is item J3, special use 21-0912. The applicant is Kenny's Liquors. Request is for a 4 COP alcoholic beverage permit, which requires separation waivers. Staff report and recommendation will be presented by Tim Lampley following the applicant's presentation.
All right. Good afternoon. Ms. Liberty? Good morning. Good afternoon.
Yeah,
It's been a long day.
Hi, my name is Dixie Liberty. I'm at 13359 Ashbart Court, Lithia, Florida, 33579. I'm here on behalf of my client at 5622 Lithia Pinecrest Road in Lithia. He's requesting a 4 COP. I just went to a hearing back in March of 2019 to get him approved for a 3 PS. The only thing that he wants to do is to add, he's got a table and he wants, when he gets new stuff in, people would like to sample it. So that's all he's doing.
I see.
Is to where he can have it for beer, wine, liquor on and off premises.
So the square footage is the same.
It's the same.
I see.
Correct. 2985, I believe, square feet.
Okay.
And I do have some, what it was before, the restrictions for the churches next door. I haven't heard from anybody. It does have, sorry, There's a heavily wooded area between the proposed wet zone and the existing church. There's also a frontier area where that blockage also, but it's really wooded area between. Haven't heard anything. And also there's residents across the street. You cannot get to the residents unless you go all the way down the road, which there is no sidewalks on either side. And it is a gated community. So you cannot get into the residential, and that's well over the 250 feet walking distance.
How long has the liquor store been in operation?
Since, well, he redid the inside. He's been there operating about a year now.
Okay. And that was when the 3PS was approved
Yeah,
since
he
then?
closed down after he was approved to go ahead and redo it from the inside. Because it takes a while to redo the shelving and the coolers and stuff like that.
I see.
And then also there is one other one. It has to do with the separation. It's kind of funky. Sorry, should be more prepared.
Which one?
Do you mean, I see, Ms. Liberty, I see there's a request for separation from a church for the community uses and also from residentially zoned property. Those are the
Yeah,
few.
and there is another one. It has a different one. It's for, this was for the structural community use. There is a recreational trail that's on the other side of the road. You can't get to it. It looks like Fort Knox to get in there.
Okay.
There's so many fences and everything. And you cannot get in there unless you go through the main gate.
I see.
And I don't know if you'd have pictures. I have pictures if you want me just to submit them.
You can file them in the record, absolutely.
Okay. You have any questions for me?
I do not, other than, I think you addressed this, whether you talked to the church and the neighbors.
Yeah, nobody has called me. Nobody has notified me. And as far as I know, nobody has contacted Hillsborough County that I was aware of.
All right. Those were my only questions.
Okay.
Thank you for that. We'll close your testimony. If you could please sign in and submit your documents. All right, Development Services, please.
Hello, Tim Lampkin again, Development Services. Per section 601111, this request is for a distance separation waiver for 4 COP AB permit for the sale of beer, wine, and liquor for sale and consumption on and off the premises. The property is located at 5622 Lithia Pinecrest Road at the intersection of Lithia Pinecrest Road and Boyette Road. The wet zone area will comprise a total footprint of 2,985 square feet, indoor area only with no outdoor seating as shown on the wet zone survey. For section 6.11.11.d.5, the applicant is required to be at least 1, 500 feet from community uses, 2, 1,000 feet from no more than 3 approved wet zonings, and 250 feet from residential uses. The applicant requires a waiver from 2 community uses and being closer than 250 feet from residentially zoned property. LD section 6.11.11.e.3 provides for their approval of separation waivers where there are special and unique circumstances. Where the alcoholic beverage use applied for does not have significant impacts on the surrounding land uses and certain circumstances negate the necessity for the specified distance requirement. Proposed wet zoning is located approximately 75 feet from the nearest residential lot, and the applicant requests a 175-foot waiver to the 250-foot distance separation. The applicant also requests a 338-foot distance separation from the 500-foot community use distance. Community use 1 is the Fishhawk Trails Community Recreational Path. Staff finds access to the recreational trails is not available across the street. There are multiple fences, including a solid fence that is shown in the report. Across Lithia Pinecrest and the fitness trails are within a gated community with an entrance approximately 0.4 miles to the east of the proposed wet zone, and thereby eliminating access directly across from the subject property. Community use 2 is a church. Grace Community Methodist Church is located on the adjacent property to the south and further east. The proposed wet zone survey does show the church is located 75 feet from the property line. However, due to the vegetative buffering and screening, straight line access between the proposed wet zoning and the church is not feasible. Staff estimated with a GIS tool that the shortest route of travel of pedestrian and vehicular traffic from the wet zone building to the front of the church buildings is approximately 785 feet. For the residentially zoned property, residentially zoned properties that are within 250 feet are located in PD 20-1013, which is north of the subject site. The residential development located there is 162 feet away and is the location of the Fish Hawks Trail and part of the HOA landscape area. The residential area is screened by brick fence and guardrail along the portion of Lithia Pinecrest Road across from the proposed wet zoning and cannot feasibly be directly accessed from the subject wet zoning. According to the GIS measurement tool, the entrance once again to the residential homes on the north side of Lithia Pinecrest is approximately 2,100 feet to the east of the proposed wet zoning. If approved, the proposed 4 COP wet zoning will replace an existing, as the applicant has stated, an existing 3 PS wet zoning. For the reasons stated, staff finds the proposed wet zoning does not propose significant impacts on the surrounding land uses and the necessity of separation requirements are effectively eliminated by the items stated. Therefore, staff recommends approval subject to the following condition. Quote, upon approval of the alcoholic beverage permit, SU-AB 21-0912, the existing 3 PS alcoholic beverage permit SU-AB 19-0441 shall be rescinded. That concludes staff's presentation unless there are any questions.
No questions at this time, but thank you. All right, we'll ask for anyone that would like to speak in support. Seeing no one, anyone in opposition? No one. All right. County staff, anything else?
No, ma'am.
Ms. Liberty, anything else? All right, then we'll close special use AB 21-0912 and go back to a variance case, which will be the last case on the agenda.
So at the start of the meeting, we moved variance application 21-0607, item H3 on the agenda to the end of the meeting. We're now prepared to hear that case. The applicant is Envirotech Pest Control Services. They're requesting a variance to buffering and screening requirements and also the setback requirements. Steve Beachy will present staff findings.
Good afternoon, Steve Beachy, Development Services. The applicant is requesting multiple variances to accommodate an existing detached carport on a property zone CG that is occupied by a contractor's office. Per Land Development Code, Section 61104C1, an accessory structure shall not be erected in any required front yard except in certain circumstances which do not apply in this case. Accessory structures shall be permitted in front yards at twice the depth of the required front yard or 50 feet, whichever is less. The CG zoning requires a 30-foot setback so the setback for the accessory structure is 50 feet. The applicant requests a 48.9-foot reduction to the required front yard setback to allow a 1.1-foot setback from the south property line along Griffin Road. The second request is per Land Development Code 61104C2. Accessory structures that are not more than 15 feet in height may occupy the required side yards, provided that such structures are more distant from the street than any part of the principal building on the same parcel. The lot abutting said required side yard and that of the minimum side setback of 3 feet is provided. The required side yard in the CG district is determined by buffering requirements found in the Land Development Code 60606. In the subject case, the adjoining property to the west is occupied by a single-family home. Therefore, the required buffer width is 20 feet. The carport is located closer to Griffin Road than the principal building on the property, therefore is subject to the 20-foot side yard setback. The applicant requests a 19.1-foot reduction to the required side yard setback to allow a 0.9-foot setback from the west property line. Per Land Development Code 60606, a 20-foot wide buffer with a type B screening is required along the west boundary of the subject parcel. The applicant requests a 19.1-foot reduction of the required buffer width to allow a 0.9-foot buffer and eliminate the screening requirement to allow no screening. In terms of findings, the applicant is subject to a code enforcement violation for an accessory structure setback violation. Also, during the review of this application, staff identified several additional site nonconformities that the applicant has elected to not address in this application. That concludes my comments. I'm available for any questions.
Just one quick question, Mr. Beachy, before you go. Excuse me, my staff report says for the accessory structure that there's a 1.10 setback for both the front yard and, excuse me, the side yard setback. However, that differs from your presentation. Is there an updated report?
Yes, ma'am. There is a revised report.
Is that
Hard to give it to you at the
okay.
beginning of the hearing.
Then it's in here somewhere. All right.
Above
Thank
here.
you so much. Okay, perfect. Thank you. That was my only question. Thank you so much. Good morning. Good
Thank you,
afternoon.
Madam Hearing Officer. Jim Porter with Ackerman, 401 East Jackson Street. First of all, thank you to you and staff for allowing me to be moved to the end of the agenda. I had an unavoidable conflict with another client, and so thank you for allowing me to be here when I am.
Absolutely.
So I want to just orient you for a moment and explain what we're talking about. So this is the subject site. It's on North Florida Avenue. Why I wanted to show this particular graphic, and this was generated by staff, was to show you not only the location of the site, but the surrounding zoning. This section of North Florida Avenue is mostly commercial. There are CG, CI, and some PDs. This is the subject parcel here. Our site is in a unique situation because you can see we abut RS6, which is this neighborhood going down Griffin Road, whereas the other properties along here are not really impacting residential. So this site has the ability to impact residential. We're here today mainly to address the code enforcement issue. This is the subject of the code enforcement citation. This is a carport that is located sort of in the rear of the property. This is the other carport here. That's not under code enforcement citation. And as staff identified, there are other issues with this site that we're trying to work through. There is opposition. I don't know if they're going to appear today or not, but I haven't spoken to them, but the applicant's spoken to neighbors along Griffin. The fundamental issue for them is flooding, which has always been an issue there because of the topography of Griffin Road in Florida. The applicant, again, this is not part of the application, but it's background information for you, is working with SwiftMud to try to address the flooding issue because it impacts them as well. But that has been, I think that was the original cause for the code enforcement call. The flooding in their minds has increased since this has been here, but it's always been an issue, but they are working through it. What triggered this in the beginning was the applicant applied for and received from the county a natural resources permit to remove magnolia trees. That would have been where this is. And so that was the screening and buffering. They removed that, they put up the carport, and that triggered a code enforcement violation, which is appropriate, and we're dealing with that. I want to show you some photos, which I'll submit into the record that shows what we're talking about. This is what the carport looks like. This is standing on Griffin Road looking into the site. Again, on Griffin Road looking to the site, you can see there is some existing foliage and screening on the property. This is the carport begins with. This is taken from the vicinity on Griffin Road near the immediate budding neighbor's driveway. So you can see there is some existing foliage here. This is the wall and the carport up over there. A little further down Griffin Road, again, you can see sort of what it looks like from first perspective. From Griffin Road, this is on Griffin Road. These are trees on the neighbor site. And you can see sort of, even though it is within the setback, required setback, there is existing screening there. Directly across from the neighbor most immediate to us is a large PD. This is the driveway that serves that. And you can see that as well. So going back to the original graphic, and I'm going to submit these all into the record, Madam Hearing Officer. You can just see the site for variance purposes, and I've included the 5 criteria, and I'm going to include that again in here. I won't go over them unless you have questions. It is a unique site given the immediate area. No other property that's zoned a CG or CI has to deal with sort of the same issues we have to deal with surrounding residential. So for that reason, we're requesting the variance. Again, we are committed to working through the other areas on the property, but I know for your purposes, you're limited to deciding whether we should be granted a variance for this or not. And that's what I'm going to be submitting. I'm also going to be a revised survey that I'm submitting into the record.
Okay. Mr. Porter, does that complete your presentation?
That completes my presentation, and there could be opposition. I'll be happy to address that.
All right, I just have a couple of questions.
Okay.
Before you go. The application narrative talks about the natural resource permit that they received for the trees, and that as it reads, it infers that they thought that would then be the permit for the construction of the carport.
And
which
they
it
were
obviously
completely
is not.
wrong about that.
Right.
Yes.
And so, but the application also talks about that if they are required to remove the carport, that they will be short parking. Is that accurate?
I think that the site is pretty tight, and staff has issues with some, again, not part of the application today. They're parking sort of on the right of way on Griffin, and if we have to address that, then we're going to end up creating a domino effect that could cause problems. So that was sort of the thought process behind that. Again, this is sort of a hard application because there are other issues that are not in front of you today, and we're trying to address the immediate issue and then continue to work with staff, whether we get cited again for code enforcement or whether we have to come in for development permits. That's going to trigger some of these other issues. That's sort of the thought process behind making sure we didn't put ourselves in a situation where we took parking away. If they took parking away on the right of way, then we would be back in a bad situation.
But would it be fair to say that a carport, not an enclosed structure, but a carport over parking spaces, the removal of which has nothing to do with the number of spaces, you're still covering existing spaces, whether the carport is there or not?
Well, we would have to, if the variance is denied, I think the presumption would be we'd have to take the carport out the pavers and put the screening back in as well. Because we've been violated for not only the buffer, but the screening. And so we couldn't park if we had to put magnolia trees back in or screening back in.
And that leads me to my next question is, why is there no attempt to put any screening? The request is for 0 screening. Why is that there's no attempt to try to mitigate against those neighbors?
I think because of the existing foliage that's already there, and just the fact that if there are pavers there, it's hard to put any kind of meaningful screening in. If there was a way to do that, I think we would look at that, but the site doesn't really lend itself to that. And that's the reason for that.
All right. And so you concur with the revised report in terms of the revised setback amounts of 1.1 feet and 0.9. Yeah. That's your number. Okay. I think that concludes my questions. Thank you so much. If you could submit those into the record. All right. Then we will go to anyone that would like to speak in support. Anyone support? No one? Anyone in opposition?
Yes,
all right.
I would like to say something.
Yes, ma'am. If you would like to start in opposition, you can give us your name and address, please.
This is opposition, not support.
Oh, you're in support. Okay, then give us your name and address, please.
I'm not in support.
Opposition.
All right, I understand. If you could give me your name and address, please.
My name is Carolyn Alvarez, and I live at 105 Griffin Road in Lutz. I am right adjacent to this property that you're talking about.
All right, if you could tell me why you're in opposition.
Well, it was nice when they had all the magnolia trees, and now they put that big old ugly topper, and it's right next door to me. I would like to see the trees go back.
All right, is that everything you'd like to say today?
Well, I thought this hearing was also going to address the water condition, but I realized that's for something else.
All right, so does that complete your comments?
Yes.
Thank you so much. Is there anyone else that would like to speak in opposition?
Carol Templeton? Okay. We can't hear you, ma'am. We can see you. Can't hear you. You unmute your mic. Down on the bottom, there should be a mute and an unmute. It is unmuted. Okay. No. Sometimes you have to back out of the meeting and come back in. So close out the app and then come back in, and we'll wait for you. Okay.
Is she the last person that wants to speak in opposition? Okay, thank you.
No, we can't hear you. So at the bottom of the email we sent you, there's a number you can call in. Just call in with your phone.
I'll also note Ms. Templeton has provided written comments, and if for some reason it can't work, I mean, there should be part of your record. If not, I'd be happy as a matter of courtesy to submit them.
Thank you.
I see the number. Can you talk?
Can you hear me?
We can hear you.
Oh, yay. Okay. Thank you. Let's see. I'm bringing my notes up.
Oh,
and I have an echo here.
Yeah, can you mute your computer? So turn off your audio for the computer.
How is that? Very good. How is that?
Much better, thank you.
Better?
Yep.
All right. Thank you. Sorry about that. It worked when I signed in. So I would like to speak up in opposition. I've lived in the neighborhood for 25 years, not quite as long as the Alvarezes. Carolyn just spoke. We're a small loot neighborhood. We have a one-lane road, no sidewalk. So any variance that you make in the neighborhood is felt strongly because it is a very small, older neighborhood. I believe the variance of almost 20 feet on the west side, which is next to the Alvarezes, and almost 50 feet on the front is unreasonable. Excuse me. I know flooding was brought up by James. I'm not sure his last name. I can't see it right now. Anyhow, we have not always had flooding in this area. There is a dip in the road, and there has been slight flooding, but nothing like it has been since they've moved in. The parking has grown. This business has severely outgrown this small property. They have to move cars just to be able to get their vans out, get the cars back in. We have called the police before because they're parked along the side of the road. Being a one-lane road, it's very difficult and unsafe getting in and out. So that's just to address those comments that he made. And I wanted to note that again, this variance arises from the current code violations, which were cited January 10th, 2020. So Mr. Couric has been given ample time to address these. A year and a half, and there's been 8 different property inspections, but he's chosen to do nothing. So now they're trying to get a variance because he doesn't want to do anything. Let's see. In fact, there was a code board hearing in April to see if they could get these variances thrown out, but they were upheld. And they had 3 months to correct these issues, which is right. We're right at that 3-month part. When Mr. Kurt first moved his business into this neighborhood, and again, we're a small, old loot neighborhood, and there are business properties at the entries of this neighborhood. But he planted the magnolia trees, 4 magnolia trees, as a buffer. But because they've grossly outgrown their property, he cut down the trees to build more parking space and this carport. Okay, so there is no, he cut down the original visual and sound buffer. So also, in addition to those violations by Hillsborough County, SwiftMud has a case currently open. It's been open a year, and it's regarding the flooding, which is getting worse. And that's, I just mentioned that because there are multiple things going on, and this gentleman has chosen not to do anything by code. You noted that Mr. Beachy said that they also identified several additional site nonconformities. So there are other things. This will go on for a while. In the letter I submitted, there are photos, aerial photos that show before and after of when we had the buffer of the trees and what it looks like now. And you will be able to see a large difference. It not only buffered against sound, but visually, because we are a neighborhood. To address the variance narrative that Mr. Porter submitted, it said the applicant received a permit to remove the trees. Well, that's not technically true. The tree company requested and received the permit, not Mr. Couric. So I don't think he could claim that he did that. And it says the trees were removed and the carport built in good faith. Good faith of what? Carport was not mentioned anywhere on the permit to cut the trees. So I just think things are being misrepresented. Let's see. Mr. Porter also makes the argument there's a building across the street from 107 Griffin Road that has ingress and egress onto Griffin Road, and so what harm is it in granting their variance because that business is already there? Well, that business, when they built the building, they provided a hedge and a ditch around 3 sides of the building and a cement wall along the back. So they perfectly followed code. No neighborhood residents had anything to say against that. However, Mr. Couric has not followed code on any of the alterations that he's done. He doesn't respect the environmental makeup of the neighborhood, hence all the violations, SwiftMud and Hillsborough County, and he certainly doesn't respect the quality of life of his neighbors. He should be held accountable and not be granted the variance. I believe that approving this variance will lead to more code violations and more damage to the neighborhood. Let's see if I have anything else. His business both leads the way it is now, not how it was before with the trees, but it leads to both lowering our neighborhood property values because it's right there. There's no buffer from 41, from the business, from all of his trucks, or the unsight unsightliness of it. So I urge you to support and uphold the county codes and deny this variance. And thank you for your time. I'm happy to answer any questions you may have.
Ma'am, could you give us your name and address for the record, please?
I'm sorry, Carol Templeton, 107 Griffin Road.
Thank you so much.
I live
appreciate it.
next to the Alvarez. You're welcome.
Thank you. All right, so no one else in opposition at this point? All right, then we'll go back to county staff. Mr. Hisney, anything further?
No, ma'am.
All right, Mr. Porter, you have 5 minutes for rebuttal.
Thank you, Madam Hearing Officer. Let me say I respect the two women who spoke. I understand it's their neighborhood and their homes, and I appreciate them taking the time to speak. Again, the applicant has spoken with them and understands their concerns. We are working with Swift Mud, even though that's not part of this application, to deal with the flooding issue. And we hope that we can get that resolved. But other than that, I have nothing to say. We respectfully ask for your approval.
All right, thank you so much. I appreciate it. With that, we'll close variance 21-0607 and adjourn the hearing. Thank you all for your time and testimony.